Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Crossing the Streams. I'm your host, Eric Rodriguez, aka Narchronic Online. I am joined today by another fantastic panel of guests to talk about one of the hottest shows of the season, one of the hottest shows that came out last year or a few years ago, actually. At this point, I forget how long time has passed between them. But it is The Last of Us Season 2. Very big show, very big game, obviously, that we all know and love. Everyone here, for clarity, has played the game. So we're going to have a pretty, detailed discussion about what we thought of the show, the adaptation, and moving forward, what it could turn into for the future seasons. I want to get right into it and introduce our guest today. Starting up top, it is Rob, returning from our Severance discussion from Real Time. Rob, thank you so much for being here.
Appreciate you for having me again, Eric. I had a blast talking about Severance and can't wait to get into The Last of Us.
Of course, thank you. And representing the normies today, it is not Serge, it is Mickey this time, and he's on time, so I appreciate it.
How's it going? Yeah, it's my first time. Excited to be here. I wish I could was here for the Andor one. I might have to go back and watch that.
Yes, please do. Appreciate it. And her first time here is Nikki, aka Mythical Reactions. Nikki, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to hop into the universe of The Last of Us with fellow gamers.
Yeah, of course. And coming back, he's one of the veterans we've had here. It is Michael, aka Omni Media. Michael, thank you so much for being here as well.
Anytime, man. You call the banners, I'll arrive.
I always appreciate it. And also his first time here, one of my favorite guys in space, JL from EOM Reacts. JL, thank you for being here.
Appreciate it. Thank you for the invite. I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Of course. And doing double duty, the ringer today. I appreciate him coming back from last week from Andor, Sonny, all the way in Denmark. Sonny, thank you for being here.
My pleasure, as always. I want to echo what Michael said. The beacons are lit and Sonny will answer. I will be here whenever you need me. So I'm excited to talk about The Last of Us with this amazing panel, talk about the series, the games, theories, all of it.
Yeah,
looking forward to
it. I messaged him at 3 a.m. his time last night, so I appreciate him coming on for this today to fill in for a seat. And last but certainly not least, my very, very good friend in the reaction space, an icon, Greg Alba. Thank you for being here, man.
Thanks for having me. I was saying before we started recording, I didn't actually look at the lineup today, and I know who all of you are, and I was like, all right, I'm a little lethargic and fatigued. And then suddenly when I hopped in, I was like, oh, shit, now I'm nervous. To know all of you guys. So, yeah, I'm excited, though. I'm excited. I'm going to warm up my brain as we go. Thanks for having me. Of course.
Yeah, no need to be nervous. As we've done before, this show is really just to highlight, our, thoughts and appreciation about the show. Obviously, to get the controversy out of the way with the show, the elephant in the room. This one has definitely been more divisive than the first season. And I think there's a lot of good reason for that. I think to preface everything we're going to say today, from my point of view, the first season was adapting a game that was fairly straightforward. It was a really great story, but it was kind of an easy story to sort of just go straight from A to B. The second game, we have, alternate sort of the shifting timeline, stuff like that. And I really think that the show was always going to have sort of quote unquote diminishing returns, just in terms of what it means to adapt that type of game into a visual format of a TV show. So we're definitely going to go over all the sort of ups and downs with that today. I think everyone here has a really nuanced appreciation for what that means for the production standpoint, for the game standpoint, just writing limitations, stuff like that. So I'm excited to sort of hear that from all of you. But first, I want to go over, briefly, just, what was everyone's sort of, general thoughts on the first game, the first adaptation, and what that meant for you. Obviously, as fans of the game, which came out over a decade ago, we had a lot of investment in, what could this mean? There were rumblings about an adaptation for years. And finally getting one, I think everyone had their hopes really high, and I think it hit the mark for a lot of people. So just to go over, what your thoughts were getting into that first season, let's start with Rob. Rob, how did you feel sort of, jumping into that first season for The Last of Us?
So, I mean, I was really, really excited whenever I found out that, The Last of Us was getting an adaptation, obviously an HBO show as well. So my expectations were pretty high. In my opinion, the first game is some of the best storytelling maybe ever in video games. It is just, it's as good as it gets, honestly, in my opinion. So I knew that it would be really, really difficult to capture all of that in a television show. I mean, they're completely different mediums. So just it wasn't going to be the same. But for season 1, I think they really nailed it. I really, really liked season 1. I thought the actors were really great. I loved Pedro in season 1. I mean, obviously, I think we all miss him in season 2. But yeah, overall, season 1 I thought was fantastic. I think my favorite parts about it and also in season 2 were just like the things that they showed that didn't happen in the game. I really like when they decide to do that. And I personally, my favorite episode was the I think it's episode 3 about Bill. And I mean that it's just amazing. That was maybe still my favorite episode in the whole show. But yeah, that was definitely my favorite part about the first season, was just seeing like the things that you hear about in the game or that like you might find in a note somewhere, and they actually like brought that to life, and we were able to see it for the first time. So I really appreciated that. And yeah, season 1, thumbs up.
I definitely agree. Yeah, some of the added stuff, including to this season as well, like was some of my favorite elements. I'll jump over to Greg. Greg at the bottom here. I'm gonna bounce around a little bit.
I was
for this one.
I'm literally about to mute my mic. So thanks for giving me the heads up.
Yeah, what were your thoughts getting into season 1? Again, just I forgot if you had played the game by the time season 1 it came out specifically, and you did for season 2. But yeah, what was your thoughts getting into that?
When I first heard about the show being announced, I hadn't played the game yet. So I decided to play the game to prepare myself for the show. And I really liked the game a lot when I first played it. And I didn't really fall in love. I immediately hopped on it to Last of Us Season 2. And Last of Us Part 2, the game. And I didn't fully fall in love with The Last of Us till Last of Us 2. Despite its controversy. And then I fell in love with the whole world. I played it again, and I fell more in love with it. So watching the show, similar to what Rob was saying, I did have like certain expectations. And the first go around, it's kind of hard not to compare, because you're like, what are they doing? There's a lot of things that are 1-to-1, and they do make differences. And then sometimes they skip out on like I personally kind of miss some of the I understand it for adaptation. I sometimes do miss some of the bring some of the violence to life, a little bit more of the gameplay to life. Like what I think about is in the 5th episode, I believe, when there's this sniper and Joel's like, all right, I'm going to go and kill this guy. And in the game, it's like a mission to get to that guy. But in the show, he's like, I'm just going to cut around the back and I'm going to like walk up the stairs. So stuff like that, I kind of miss a little bit of. But in terms of an adaptation, I agree with Rob. I think that episode is the best one of Bill. I think the way they handled Tess, I cared way more about her in the actual show. And watching the show, it really showed me that they're going to have different perspectives. Whereas like in both of the games, whatever character you're playing as, you never cut perspectives. And I like the expansion of that. And on the second go around, the second time I watched the season, I enjoyed it a lot more, actually, because I was able to divorce myself from the game. And it really dawned on me of how different Pedro plays it, because in the game, I view Joel a little bit more traditionally, like, American Texan hardened guy. No matter what grief the guy has, he's still a badass at the end of the day. And I don't view Pedro as a badass. I think Joel in the game is a little bit more hardened, and I think Pedro in the show is more broken, which makes him more relatable and real. So yeah, I love the first season. I love that even way more on the second go around. Sorry for taking so long there. I had to figure out my thoughts. Thanks for listening.
Perfect. Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
No problem at all. Yeah, I mean, obviously, you're definitely right about Pedro's, adaptation of the character. I think that bleeds into a lot of like, everyone's sort of interpretations of like those performances. Nikki, getting into the game and the show itself for that first season, how did you feel? Yeah, sort of in terms of adaptation, like, the changes and the liberties they took with it and how close they were with certain elements.
So I feel like they did their own thing. Like Pedro, like you said, had brought his own like emotional, more softened side to it compared to the game. So, and that was like kind of their goal. Like they all kind of wanted to put them in their own space, and especially with like Ellie and Joel. But my favorite part of season 1 was the episode with Sarah, because I feel like that was like very like one-on-one with the game. And when I played the game, I actually I streamed it on my Twitch channel, and people were like, "Oh, this part coming up." So I kind of like knew. And so it didn't really hit me that hard the first time when I was playing the game, but when I was watching the show, I was like tears. Like I just felt like the emotion was really brought to it like so well. So I think that was my favorite part of like season 1. I agree with the part with how they kind of cut corners, and they don't really like show you the whole part of, you know, trying to get to point A to point B. So that was, they could have made it a little bit longer by doing that, I think, and giving us a little bit more of like the immersive side of being put into the game and having to sneak and loot and do all that stuff. So that's how I feel about season 1.
Absolutely. Michael, you have played the game. Obviously, you're a big fan of it. Covering, I believe, both shows for the channel. You know, you've had the ability to sort of digest it on camera, as you know, like I think a lot of people do. But some people here didn't have that ability just for being, you know, not around in the space as much. What were your thoughts getting into it? And I guess from a, again, reaction standpoint, what were your thoughts sort of breaking that down?
Well, I mean, as far as like the first game goes, the way they adapted in season 1, I think they did as far as adaptations go, a really good job at focusing in on like the really important core elements of it. And just like Greg kind of said, like the difference in the portrayals and for me, I think like the biggest thing, maybe if I had to, well, which I did harp on a little bit, was I kind of felt this in the second one too. I loved like the characterization. I love the story. I love the pathos of everything. And even the changes, like with the Bill story, because that episode on an island is, I think, arguably the best episode of the season, but it's also one of the biggest changes from the game as well, because that is a huge shift. And there's some great little iconic little moments that we didn't get as a result of that as well. But like, there's a lot of things like that happen that I can kind of forgo. But like for me, I think the biggest thing that I think the second season did a lot better was like once we're out in the world felt like more of a threat in season 2 than in season 1. Because like even the situation where Joel gets injured and Ellie has to like take care of him for an episode, you know, that whole scenario was definitely ramped down. Felt like once we were in the world, the infected kind of weren't as big of a hurdle as one would think. But as far as like the important beats, they nailed it. And if you're going to compare it to any other video game adaptation, it soars beyond all of them for the most part. So it's hard to really complain too much, because what we got was a feat in of itself. And I love that story. While it is not too dissimilar from some things we've seen in other media and other avenues, I think The Last of Us, both the game and the first season, you know, just because we've seen it before, we can do something again poorly,
right? But
they did it really, really good and better than most versions of it that I've seen. So while it's not unfamiliar, they hit the nail on the head, I think, in both adaptations. And because I think some of the best things that both do is when we're not adapting and we're adding, like with the Sarah episode, getting to see her day beyond what we got in the game itself was wild world building that we didn't get to have. And that being able to get out of Joel and out of Ellie's perspective is some of the best stuff too, because I mean, in season 2, we get to see what's happening to Jackson when the horde happens, and we never get that perspective at all. We focus just solely on, you know, Joel and Abby's group and them just trying to survive the night, you know, and then we get like, you know, most the action, a lot of the people you're bumping into in season 1 or in the first game is like random raiders or whoever, like a lot of nameless folk. And we even gave them personality and lives and stuff like that, motivations and stuff, like, because we didn't have the WLF, we didn't have the Seraphites in the first game. It was really just a bunch of no ones and then the Fireflies. Yeah. And then they became people in that. And I love that kind of became the focus of at least the adaptation was was really making everybody feel, even like your enemy, feel like a human being at the end of the day. And I thought that was fascinating.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's. I mean, you're definitely right. I mean, like fleshing out, I think all facets of it and continuing to do so in season 2 is one of the most important elements of what they could achieve in a TV adaptation. Mickey, getting into first season, how did you feel? Sort of like again on the adaptation element of it.
Yeah, I was skeptical because video game adaptations tend to not do very well. I wasn't worried for myself because I played the game, I've gotten the experience, but I was more worried for people that are only going to engage with this story in the visual format. And I was just like, are they gonna be able to deliver that same feeling to them that I had playing the games? And I was very pleasantly, surprised and satisfied. I thought that season 1 was a great, pretty one-to-one adaptation. And like everybody's already said, all of the additions were awesome. Seeing the origin of the mutated strain in the Indonesia flower factory was really cool. The Bill episode was awesome. Just that one episode was from top to bottom, just like how they managed to tell that whole story in one episode was really great. So I was happy that they pulled it off, and that people that are only going to watch the show, they're still walking away with like a pretty one-to-one experience. Like if anyone asked me if they should play the games also, I would be comfortable saying, like, if you don't have a lot of time, if you have a busy schedule, you could watch the first season and skip the first game. I would still tell them to play the first game. I think it's worth doing it, but I thought that the first season was good enough that you could skip the first game if you wanted to and still get that core experience and still walk away with that same feeling. I wouldn't say that for the second game, but or second season, but we'll get there. But yeah, also I like Pedro Pascal's. I thought Greg had a good analysis on that. Is like, does like that hardened self is still kind of there, but it's almost like he's like this. He's been through rehab. He's like reformed. He's like, I don't do violence anymore, kind of thing. So he definitely took that and made it his own. And it's such a beloved game and a beloved franchise that those were like really big shoes to fill for both Pedro and Bella. And I think they knocked it out of the park. Yeah, season 1 was incredible.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like definitely about Pedro. It's like showing him as really truly an older man, and like what that means for like a realistic take, rather than like the tank that he is in the game. I think it is an important choice to make, like Greg said, make it more believable. Sonny, I mean, obviously you're a big fan of the game. Kat as well. You both had like a really great interaction with like the first season of the show. What did you both think about that getting into it?
Well, to begin with, like I have been a big fan of Naughty Dog like my entire life. Like one of the first games I remember playing was Crash Bandicoot on PlayStation 1. And then when PlayStation 2 came out, I got really into Jak and Daxter, all those games. PlayStation 3 rolled around, and they're moving on to Uncharted. So when they announced The Last of Us, of course, I was going to play that because they hadn't missed at that point. And boy, they really did not miss with the first game either. Absolutely fantastic. And then you hear, oh, they're going to adapt it. And as Mickey already said, video game adaptations have been iffy at best. So, of course, going into it with some sort of trepidations there, but also learning like who was going to be the showrunner or showrunners. We have Craig Mason, who did Chernobyl, which was like one of the first shows that we reacted to on the channel, and I would dare say it's the show that where most people found us to begin with. Just a second, if you can.
Okay, Daddy Judy calls. Don't worry. We'll hop over to JL. JL, similar question, obviously, as to everyone. Just getting into the game. You actually played the game fairly recently. It wasn't something that you had grown up with, like a lot of us did, years ago and stuff like that. You played it, and then you got into the show itself. I guess what was that experience like for you?
Well, for me, I actually got into the show before I got into the game.
That's right. Yeah, the opposite.
So, because I was an Xbox kid, you know what I'm saying? So we couldn't play The Last of Us.
Right.
So I always heard about the game, so it was kind of like I always wanted to play it. And then when the show came out, I was like, well, hell yeah, I'll watch the show. I've heard great things about the game. And then I heard people talking about how good Pedro was as like an actor because of where he's been in Game of Thrones and The Mandalorian and stuff. So I was like, yeah, I'll give it a chance. So I'm watching the show with no idea that there's any differences in the game. So the show is my first introduction to Joe and Ellie and all that stuff. So when I got to the game and I seen the little differences, I was like, oh, because there's a lot of things watching the show first, going into the game that I was looking for that never happened.
Mhm.
Like, I'm horrible with names and actresses and stuff like that. Old girl who was after Henry in the season
Oh,
one.
yeah.
I was waiting for her to get. I was waiting for her.
Kathleen, yeah.
I was waiting for her to get killed in the game. She never showed up. So, you know what I'm saying? So it was just like little differences. Like, but Joel, to me, I guess I kind of fell in love with Joel because where I grew up in Southern West Virginia, he's like the dudes there in the game. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't care if your arm fall off, you show no emotion, you go on about your life. You know what I'm saying? Men don't cry, none of that stuff. So that's kind of how he was in the game. So to see him, to see Pedro first do it and show that he has like some fear, because like when Tess got bit and she started turning and she took a step towards him, he takes a step back. So he has more fear in the show, which I liked a whole lot, because in the game he don't show no fear. He's just basically Rambo John Wick.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Just, I'm here to bust ass. I really don't fuck with none of y'all. Excuse me. But you know what I'm saying? But you know what I'm saying? I gotta get her to point A to point B. I don't want to do it, but Tess told me to, so I'm doing it for her. Just seeing the difference, it was like a little mind blowing, but I fell in love with it from the jump. It was a beautiful story to me.
Mhm. Absolutely. Sonny, to finish your thought before you're taken
Yeah.
away. Barely taken away.
Yeah, that's he was just proudly telling me that he pooped his pants, so that was
Good.
great.
Good.
But yeah, where was I? Learning who was going to be the showrunners. Craig Mason just did Chernobyl, and then Neil Druckmann, of course, who did the game. So that immediately calmed me down a little bit, and then when the series, the first season came out, we started, of course, reacting to it on the channel. And it was very clear from the get-go that, okay, they are going to stay very faithful here to the source material, but they're also going to add a lot of things when it makes sense to add them, and when it makes sense for like the theme or themes of the story in the first game, in that first part. And is like you guys have already mentioned the third episode with Bill and Frank a lot, and I think that they did that. You know, it was a beautiful way to expand upon the theme of love, which is a very big theme in the first part of the story. Whereas when you get to the second part, and we'll get to that, it is more about revenge and all of that, like what can come from losing a loved one. But here, to begin with, it is more focused on love. It is a more straightforward story, and I definitely didn't mind that they cut out a lot of the badassery stuff from Joel and all the action, because in like the world that they're establishing, it is still, it comes from a video game, but it's very grounded. And you can get away with certain things in video games that it's not the same in like a live action, like in a series or in a movie. And if you're trying to do it grounded, in like if your characters are running around and killing between 100 and 200 people like during the course of the show, then they're just going to seem superhuman, and it kind of takes away from it feeling grounded, which that is also something that is when it comes to season 2, and again we'll get to it, because there's a lot of killing in that game, but they toned it way down in the season. So those changes I really dug about the first season, and overall I thought they did an amazing job. And yeah, again with Pedro's portrayal of Joel, just like Greg said, not this badass person who's it doesn't really show a lot of emotions necessarily. And then we have Pedro, who's like, he's still like this gruff person, like still a badass and all, and you can still like definitely see that being a part of the character still, but he plays him as a broken man. And yeah, so I thought that was a great point, and something that is very apparent in like those two different differences between like how Troy played him and then how Pedro played him.
Yeah.
But it fits with the first season, and fits with the world still. So very, very satisfied with the first season for sure.
Bella Ramsey, I know she's been getting like a lot of crap, and I know we'll get into whatever our opinions are of season 2. If we were to isolate just season 1, I think she's incredible in season 1, and her chemistry with Pedro is kind of off the charts.
But of course, Bella, I mean, like you said, like, deserves all the credit that they deserve from the first season, getting into this one as well. I know it was tough. It was tough to cast that character because people have been fan casting that character for years. So like, who could play it? And as you get further and further down the line of production standpoint, people age out of that fan casting and stuff like that. I remember, I think Caitlin Dever, who now plays Abby, had said that she had was in talks eventually at one point to potentially play Ellie when they were initially putting the show together.
Really?
So yeah, it's funny how this sort of comes around. But you're absolutely right. I mean, everyone here is making great points about the weight that the characters hold in a TV adaptation, as opposed to what they can do in a video game adaptation where you are the character. It's very different. You are the vehicle driving the character's motivations in some aspects, and you kind of have to put yourself in their shoes. And I think that teases up for the second half of this discussion for season 2. And it's important to, I think, preface everything with the fact that a point that I usually make for a lot of adaptations, that sometimes the thing that the medium that I think is made in is the best medium it works in. And for me, even though the first game is really great, the second game is a sort of quintessential video game. It is something that where the storytelling is so ingrained with the experience of being a video game that you really had to sort of change things to sort of fit it into a TV format. Some things, yes, you can say like, I wish they did it this way, that way. And we're going to go over, I think, some of the divisiveness that this season has, brought up for people in the overall fandom. But I think it's important to recognize that, there are parameters within you have to work with for the show. And there are things that you can't really just, put one-to-one on screen, because it doesn't really, execute the same way. For lack of a better word. So I'm excited to hear what your thoughts are. Everyone, again, who here has played the game and who has gone over, like what that, emotionally meant to you. And again, being invested in the story and the characters in your own way, and what you thought, how that was adapted and almost reimagined, for the screen in a way. We're going to start bouncing around again. We'll start with Nikki up top. Nikki, what were your thoughts getting into the season, and how did that sort of reflect for you? And again, everyone, please, if I tee you up for one thing, feel free to jump in with your thoughts on other things as well. But again, yeah, Mickey, what were your thoughts getting to the second game, and then how did the season sort of shake out for you in terms of just the adaptation and the changes from it?
Yeah, I anticipated that this was going to be a controversial season because the game was controversial, so like I don't think that they were going to be able to please everybody no matter what. However, this season did leave me scratching my head at a few choices that they made. But I think that it's still an adequate adaptation. I had the same worry about other people watching this game or watching the show, is like, is it going to deliver that same feeling? And I have to agree with Greg. Is like, I very much disagree with the hate that Bella Ramsey got for her portrayal, because they knocked it out of the park in season 1. Like, Bella is Ellie. I think that any of the grievances with season 2 that I have is like the writing. I think that they didn't age her, and when I say her, I mean Ellie, the character, They didn't age Ellie up enough. I think that Ellie still kind of comes across a little childish, whereas like in the game, she's more of like a freight train. And it's almost like in the game, people are afraid to say no to her, as opposed to in season 2, it kind of feels like she's, I don't know. It kind of missed a mark a little bit there. And I also think that they were kind of pulling their punches a little bit. I think that to really get the point across with this season, they had to go all in with the violence, all in with like the darkness and like the grittiness. And I do feel like the backlash that the second game got definitely affected their choices. And I think they were probably afraid to make it quite that dark. So I feel like they kind of definitely did pull their punches a little bit. But I still enjoyed it. I still think it was a really good season, a good, adequate adaptation. I think people that are saying they completely ruined the show or they completely changed things to the point where it's not even recognizable anymore, I hard disagree with that. I think that it was still a very good season. A lot of it was still very one-to-one. And again, the changes that they made, I really like the changes, like the attack on Jackson. Makes perfect sense, because it's like there's this huge crowd of infected in the game. You just kind of skip to a few days later. It's like, what happened with that? So that makes sense. Tommy and Jesse going second instead of before made sense to me. Expanding on Eugene and having Gail in the show, I really love that. I think that the season again did a lot of things better than the game in some respects, but it didn't quite deliver that feeling that the game gave me. And I think that's more to do with just how they chose to write Ellie. And I think that was really the only miss. But I still very much enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I think that for anyone that sees us giggling, Greg is trolling us in the private chat here. This is very funny. But no, it's really, you're totally right. But, people saying that, they tarnish the story so much that it's, the TV show is, like unrecognizable from the game or whatever. But I personally think that it's just such a different vehicle that I would call it like almost a reimagining, because I feel like when you get to something like this, they poured their heart and souls into the game for many years, and they have talked about like the sort of production standpoint. There's a whole documentary you can watch about the birth and second game, and where they talk about the behind the scenes part of it. And they really were on the edge of like certain choices and like ideas. They went back and forth on things. So I feel like once you get into the TV show, they really have the opportunity to just as artists to say like, maybe I want to try it differently. Maybe I want to see like, what if we had done it this certain way, this other way than we did in the game, just for their own creative standpoint. I think they should have the opportunity to do that. I know people want the game and the show to be sort of one-to-one sometimes, but I think it's fair to see where they're coming from when they want to start to try new things and like reimagine what different avenues would look like if they could do it differently. Michael, getting into the second game, speaking specifically to the changes, what were some of the I guess your ideal changes that they made this season, and what were some ones that you think probably didn't work for you as much?
For me, like I was wanting to piggyback off of Mickey's, you're talking about, I think the first 2 episodes, we're honestly stronger of an intro than the game had to get us over the hurdle of that first big swing that the game took. Well,
see what you did there.
I didn't. That was unintentional, but it works out. Swing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Anyway, I thought like, because when I was playing the game, because I had the displeasure of having that spoiled like a month before the game came out. So getting into it, I was like, okay, I already know this is coming in. I'm going to let the game tell me how this happens. And in the game, when you're jumping into it, I felt like some of the situational things didn't line up with like, let's say the Joel I knew and stuff like that. Like, I had to do a lot of like gymnastics in my mind to like, how did we get in this position to begin with? So then the way they set that up, it's Joel and Dina, how we kind of get these little setups with him going to therapy. We get these moments with him and Tommy beforehand and his nephew. Like they lay out a groundwork and a Joel and a situation that I think made a lot of that more believable, because when you're going from like the game into the next game, because again, like we kind of talked about before, Joel's very different in the game than he is in the show, in the way that he kind of handles things. And like I was kind of bumped into, I was like, I don't buy that Joel would fall for this or be so like, you just like walk into this trap in that way and not be hesitant, like whatever. You have to, as a player, you don't feel that time gap, I think, is part of the thing, a little bit of the hindrance coming into it. But they did a really good job at being like, look what Jackson's done to Joel, how he's changed, he's softened, he's, you know, they acclimated things into a way that got us to the big moment. Like, it just, I don't know. I thought all of that worked so much better at helping us through that transition, or at least understand how we got there. And then there's just adding the Ellie crawling over to him, expecting to die with him moment. And they repeats the moment from episode 5 where they're huddled together.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like stuff like that I really, really, really liked. Then I'm kind of torn, like, because there's some things that like that I feel like got, you know, we already a little divided on, I think, is like the dulling of Ellie's darkening, like her stumbling down that path, her losing Joel and what that does to her. I do feel like they kind of dulled that a little bit.
Yeah.
So like it's almost like these flickers that happen rather than this descent that we see. I agree with that personally as well, especially when it came to Mel and the Owen scene. But I think like my biggest, like where I've been the most mixed, I think, was dumping all the flashbacks in a single episode.
Right.
I like that episode. I think like with the Bill thing, I love it as a pocket because it's its own little movie that tells us, oh, this is everything we missed with them. I love it on an island and conceptually by itself, but like I feel like it would have played better if it was parsed out as the moments were happening. I think that's my biggest thing, because also then you'd be like, oh, we just lost Joel, and then because like in the game that was a big thing that kept people from going into the game too, because that was a huge leak before it came out. So you had people that didn't even try the game because of it. Then you have people that didn't know and then went into it and then like, oh, what? So like it's this big, huge endeavor. And I think like that's a great way to kind of keep people fed along, because I'm not sure how general audiences are playing along. And I'm not sure if the numbers are out, because that's something, even in my reaction, I was very curious about. I want to see the graph for this season at certain points, but I don't know. That's kind of some of the things that I think has like I said, some of the things that are different in some vein do really, really help the story along, like that opening section. But I don't know. I'm willing to hear them out and see where they go with it.
Absolutely. I'm going to introduce our final guest here today, who finally made it in, Sam from Team JVS. Sam, thank you for being here.
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
Thank you so much for showing up. I know you were having a busy day, so I appreciate you hopping in.
Yeah, it's my son's birthday today, and then I had an interview I had to do.
Oh, damn.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's a busy day, so I think thank you for coming in.
Yeah.
We're going over thoughts of season 2. Obviously, a lot to go over, and the divisiveness that it's brought to a lot of the fandom. Being a game player for everyone here, I think it's important to sort of break down our expectations of it and like what it means to us to like go into it and understand like production standpoint what could be changed and what needs to be changed. Sam, let's jump right into you. You got here now. What were your thoughts getting into the second game, and what were some of the elements that you thought worked for you that were changed, and like what did you think about just the overall sort of format of it, going from a video game that's very immersive and sort of like one-to-one, very personal, to a TV show where you're now the bystander of the characters and watching their journey?
Yeah, no, of course. One of the things that I was really hesitant about going into the second game, not just the fact that people are traumatized still of the game and haven't reserved themselves from the game, but how are you going to tell a game that's long? And I was like, I knew expectation-wise, they're trying to kit this at like 10 episodes or maybe even less than that. And when they said 7 episodes, I was like, there's not going to be a perfect point to end this. And so I was like, how do you go and have this transitional point from a second season to a third season? I already was kind of hesitant about that. But even before that, I kind of really wished that I got those 5 years. I really wish that they would have taken from the moment that Ellie and Joel got to Jackson to the moment that, of course, everything transpired in the second game, that we got those 5 years, which is one of the reasons why I love one of the episodes in this season. But I did have a lot of concerns up front of how they were going to truly transition that. Not just that, from the concept of the cordyceps and how they actually go with different infection. I was like, I don't know how they're going to make this work. So I was really fearing a lot. And I guess that's why I didn't get let down as much as a lot of other people, because one of the things that I thought it was a really risky thing to do, but it made it more palatable for people that weren't gamers, is showing what happened to Abby at first at the gravesite very early on, because we never got that. We didn't get that hand holding, so to speak, as gamers. It's like this woman shows up, she kills one of our favorite characters, and then we have to play as her, right? But with this, they kind of allowed us to kind of decompress with, like, not necessarily empathizing with her, but understanding like why she's doing what she's doing. And I think that that's where there's a huge divide with a lot of people's concept of the game transition to the show. But I understand why Craig and Neil did it, because it lost a lot of gamers that we didn't get that. It was such a knee-jerk reaction that it put people off, or they just had to stick with it and hate played it. And then they appreciate it, you know, from not as a game, because it's not for entertainment. The second game is not for entertainment. The first game is for entertainment. It's really about the narrative. And there's not many games that do that. A lot of movies and indie movies do that, but not a lot of games play for just the narrative. This wasn't for entertainment. And so it's like, based off that premise, there was a lot of hurdles that they were going to have to deal with going and transitioning into this for this second season. But for me personally, I do see, you know, even what Omni was saying, I was listening in, is that they absolutely did lessen the blow with a lot of different things, whether it was from Ellie, whether it's from understanding Abby, whether it was us conditionally seeing certain traumatic moments that we felt in the game. But this is my trepidation with all this. In the game, I'm not sure about y'all, but at the moment that Joel died, I was ready to kill anything and everything. I had a body count of like 100, and I kept going. Even when I was Abby, I had a body count that kept going. And that's not how this season is designed. Like, there are certain moments from even with Jesse and Ellie, just that like sequence alone towards his end, that I was like, man, there was a lot of bodies that went through that. We didn't get any of that. And so it's kind of hard to kind of transition, like, for us as gamers versus a person that never played the game, to interpret what that actually means, because we have a lot more time. We have a lot more buildup and things that we have to do. And we can't put the controller down. We have to keep going. So it's a hard sell. It was always, to me, going to be a very hard sell up front. So I think that's why I gave it a lot more grace personally. But I do love their effort. I think that they did a really good job of accomplishing something that I didn't think they could actually accomplish. But I think that, again, the hesitation that I worried about up front was, how do you end this? Where are you going to end this season? And a lot of people are pissed about how to end it, but it was never going to be a perfect stance on where they were going to end it, to me. But we can definitely go into more, for sure. Absolutely. I can talk for days on this.
Yeah. You bring up a good point, you know, about just the opening of the show, you know, leading with Abby and her motivations. Greg, I remember watching a reaction to that, and just like you commented right away about how that's, you know, sets a different tone, you know, for, you know, the series. What were your thoughts on, you know, opening the show that way and giving us that clarity up front?
I understand it, because it's a completely different buy-in than doing a video game. You know, when you're playing a video game, by the time you get to Joel's death, I've already been playing for a couple of hours. I've already spent $60. I'm not going to quit the goddamn game. So it's, but on a show, they have run a lot more risk. Like, I think the game is significantly colder than the show. I think the show at times kind of wants to hug you a little bit. Like Omni brought up earlier on, the crawl over to Joel after Joel dies. in the game, that was like so much meaner. You know, Manny like spits on Joel's body, then knocks out Ellie. And it's a hard cut to Ellie's all bruised. And this one, it relishes in the guilt a little more. At first, I didn't mind it. I personally would have liked the structure if we didn't really know what the hell was going on. And by the end of the season, I was like, I'm pretty sure that, oh, Sonny, I see you. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that they were a little bit scared. Now, I loved the season. I love the season, but I think they were a tiny bit. I think it's great if we never show what's going on in this channel. I think they were a tiny bit scared because I'm like, how many times did the season have to tell us, hey, what Joel did was not really good. It wasn't a good. I'm like, they told us this like 5 times in like 5 different monologues. Like, we don't even hear it all the time. And at first, it was fine to get like a little tease about it, especially because, you know, like the first season, as they adapted it, they're adapting one story in the first season. And in this one, they're like, shit, we need to hook people for like 3 seasons here. And it's not and we're going to kill off our superstar, our leading man. We're going to have to do some things different. So I understand from a producer standpoint why they made that shift. Does it enhance the story? I've talked to people who didn't play the games, and for them it worked. For them it helps them. As a gamer fan, it's not my personal preference, but I think Caitlin Dever, I think what she did was impressive because I was very much the person of, I think Abby should be buff as hell. I think that is an emblematic side of her revenge, of like whatever moment comes when I see Joel, I can murder him at any second. And that Caitlin Dever was doing her performance, I was like, damn, she's actually surprisingly very believable, and because she's just that damn good of an actor. So I liked it. And I mean, yeah, just to answer that one question, since I know we all have like a bunch of different opinions, and because I could talk, I've talked forever about this show, and I can talk forever about this show. I do think it works. And then in response to like just one other thing, because I don't want to like hog the floor here, I do agree though on sides about Ellie would not get, like Mickey brought up a point earlier. Was Mickey or Sonny? One of you guys brought up a point that Sonny, I think, about not needing to see so much violence in the gameplay. I feel like for Last of Us 2, though, I think we needed some more violence from Ellie.
Her descent,
yeah. Beyond, like, my favorite level that is not in the show is when Ellie is messing up all the people in WLF. It's ramping up, and then Jesse shows up. That's my favorite level of the entire game. And when you're there as a player, you feel the revenge. And I think the best part of any revenge story is you want to get that cathartic relatability where you're like, I am feeling the revenge. Think Kill Bill, think John Wick Part 1. And that's where I think the show, because they wanted to be a little bit more like, I don't know, reflective or meditative. I don't know exactly what, deliberate. I think it missed out on some of the propulsion. I think it missed out on some of the heart rate of it, and I think it missed the mark a bit in the writing when it comes to Ellie, and they shied away, because to me it's not about bringing gameplay to life. I'm like, no, the violence is a part of the character. The infliction of violence is a part of the character. And while we got a Laura scene, I do think even there they missed out on an opportunity, because when I'm watching the show, I'm like, how the hell did she get in this hospital? How'd she break in? And I think the show like skips over that when I'm like, those little things could have really helped, I think, dilute some of the conversation that happened towards Bella Ramsey as feeling like, oh, they don't feel like their portrayal is capable. Because in the game, when you're playing as Ellie, if Ellie feels very capable of doing all this, and the show misses out on some of these little things that do that. But in terms of the flashback episode, that is probably and Omni, Michael and I are good friends, and so about to disagree with you here. even though I know you said you like it, is that that's personally my favorite episode of the entire series. Also, keep in mind, Last of Us 2, the game, is my favorite video game of all time. So to take the ending flashback scene that hits so hard and then throw it in to this giant flashback episode is a big sell to me. But the way they do the generational rage, the way they link it to Joel's dad, and the mirroring that they do when Joel's dad, after he's like, Joel's dad is saying, I'm better than my grandfather, even though I'm not great. Clearly, he's kind of an abusive father. And then his dad disappears into the hallway shadows. And then when Joel is talking with Ellie at the dance and Ellie's like, swearing him off, then you watch Joel disappear into the shadows there, showing like, oh, he didn't do better than his dad like he wanted to. So to get that final scene, it broke me so hard. I cry in the game, but it hit me a lot harder in the show because on personal levels of understanding generational rage, it hit me so much more than of like a guy who's he just loves this person, but he keeps making a lot of massive mistakes. And I think we can all relate to that to some extent. So yeah, I love, that's my favorite episode of the entire series. So while I think season 1 is a much stronger, cohesive season overall, this season contains 2 of my favorite episodes of the entire series. Episode 2, the battle at Jackson and Joel's death, and then episode 6, the whole backstory with what happened with Joel and Ellie. So yeah. Thanks for letting me rant.
No, you're totally right. I think that's such a really beautiful episode that distills, I think, so much of the characters down for just like an hour length, which is like the same what they did with Bill and Frank in the first season. It's an achievement to be able to execute that with within the time frame that they have. On top of adding on different elements like Joel's father and Eugene and stuff like that, and like just like tying in new themes into that and like what that means for the characters. I think it's like that's kind of really where the show shines in a lot of ways, is when they could like take those liberties and like express themselves in different formats. Sonny, obviously being a father, a new father for the last couple of years, getting into that scene with Joel's father and like what that means to like pass on your will to your children and do your best. I guess, how did that hit for you, along with some of the other newer elements of the season?
It hit really hard. There are a lot of things that when you become a parent, it will just hit in a totally different way, and it will hit a lot harder. So especially when it comes to being a parent, when it comes to kids. So like, and I know you didn't ask specifically about that, but just the whole like pregnancy aspects that we got going on in the second season, second game, and everything with Dina, but also the Mel scene that was like, please don't. Very hard to watch, but like, just like Greg said, like I really, 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 really appreciate what they did with episode 6, even though like at first I was like, no, are you putting the porch scene here? Really? Not towards the end. But it works so well with that episode because you got like that narrative thread all the way through about do better, be better. And that's also, I don't know if any of you guys have played the new God of War games. There's a whole thing with we have to be better in that as well, and it's about generational rage and about being a father, and so that stuff of course, like it just really, really hits. And then having Tony Dalton play Joel and Tommy's father, like, I mean, come on, Lalo Salamanca himself did such a great job in that role, even for that, just like that one scene. So it makes it like actually, yeah, even more impactful when you then get to the porch scene, and then you throw in what we've talked about already with how Pedro is portraying Joel as more of a broken man, and him breaking down and saying like, it's because I love you in a way that you won't understand unless you have one of your own. Paraphrasing, that made that scene again just hit that much harder for me. personally, at least. So there were definitely things that they did inside of this season that hit harder for me than when I was playing the game. But also to continue on with like what so many of you have been saying already about not having certain aspects that was in the game, not having those in this season, especially the violence, because it is very much like it's such a big part of the narrative. And you're so right, Sam, when you said that like this is not entertainment. This is a narrative, and it fucking hurts. And it's supposed to like that. That's the whole thing about the story that they're telling in this part of the story compared to the first one that was more about finding the love in a horrible world. This is just like horrible things going on in an already horrible world, and it's like we're being bogged down by all of it. So I appreciate those little glimmers of like them softening the blows here and there during the season. It makes it for a more comfortable watch, I guess, compared to the game. But I was really, really nervous when they were going to do the second season. Loved the first season so much, and you know about everything that went on with the game and the leaks and the backlash, and just the narrative structure of the second game. I was so curious, like, are they going to keep to that? Like, that was the big one for me, was, are they going to just throw us into it just like in the game? We're not even going to know who Abby is, her motives, like why did she do this? And then we won't really know until the next season. But they both let us, as you guys already said, like we got to know the reasoning like behind, okay, why are they here? Why is Abby here? Why is she so freaking mad at Joel? We got that, so we understand it, and I think that was a very good decision. But I got fooled there a little bit. I thought that sort of at first I thought that it signaled that they were going to not do first we get the Ellie part and then we get the Abby part. I thought they were going to do like this with the series, like with the narrative,
right?
To also make it, I guess, more digestible for the general audience, because this story is like, it's not very digestible at all, and they didn't do that. So we are getting all of Abby's story next season, and like when you play the game, you've already bought it. You've already paid the I don't know, like $60-$70 or how much it is in dollars. You've already paid that. You're going to play the game, even if you rage play or hate play it, like whatever you want to call it. But I'm just really afraid that a lot of people now are going to be like, nah, I'm out. I'm not going to watch next season.
It's a hard ask once you, especially because like I've seen a lot of people, like, even though we got Abby's like explanation, it's just like, no, kill her. No, I'm not. I don't want to see her side of the story. I just want her dead.
Yeah.
Like, and that's,
I understand her. I still hate her. Yeah,
and we have to wait for that next part of the story to come out. When you have the game, you get to just kind of go right in, so you don't. It's a little bit easier of an ask when you can just move on.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, yeah. I think that
Right.
you know, I think they try to alleviate some of that with giving Abby's side pretty upfront, so you can like at least understand the motivation, especially if they knew going into the end of the season that we weren't going to resolve everything and we wouldn't see her half of the story. I think you kind of want to like give the audience a little something to chew on to understand, like, okay, what we're going to see is going to allude to these motivations that we now know as a sort of as a whole. We're going to get the details of that now, especially with her side and her personal relationships with her friends. Nikki, obviously a lot of things we talked about, thematically, emotionally tie into, your investment of the show and the game as well. What was, I guess, similar to everyone else, I guess, how did the show shake out for you in terms of like, what it did differently and like what it sort of achieved on its own with new thoughts, new elements, and how it compared to the game for you?
So I feel like I might have a little bit of a controversial opinion on Ellie, just because I personally got really pissed off at her when I was playing the second game, specifically like because I'm pregnant right now. So when Dina like tells her like, oh yeah, I'm pregnant, and then in the game she's just like, well, you're a burden now. Like I was really off put personally by like Ellie in some moments in the second game. So seeing her a little bit more softer and like loving towards Dina in that sense, especially when she like makes a joke about her being a dad, I just feel like that definitely was like softened. I could tell for TV, but I mean it's written for TV, so it's adapted in that way. So surrounding all like the pregnancy and everything, especially hit differently now that I am experiencing that. So I think I do like some of the changes. I think that if they had like maybe given us more time a little bit to kind of understand that, I just think Ellie is experiencing rage in a different way. I've always kind of viewed Ellie as like maybe neurodivergent. So I think that's why sometimes like her emotions come across like she's kind of lost, and she has like moments where she's like really aggressive, but then she has moments where she steps back and she feels like a lot of guilt. So that's how I've always viewed Ellie. And when it comes to other characters, the changes I do like was when they made Dina go with Joel. I think that gave Dina a little bit more. I care a little bit more about Dina in the show now. I feel like now I'm just like, okay, like she is more than just Ellie's like bestie / girlfriend, and I really like Dina's character in the show. Mm-hmm. So I think those changes are good. I just think that it just maybe could have been done maybe a little bit better, but I'm not really necessarily like upset about the portrayal of like all the characters. I think the thing is like with this story is there's no like hero and villain. There's no right and wrong. So like it challenges you a little bit because every other show, somebody could be really bad, but if you're watching it from their POV, you're like rooting for them, right? So I feel like this story, this whole Last of Us with the game and the show, is it kind of makes you be like seeing things from everybody's perspective that nobody's in the right. And so I think sometimes people get confused because they're like not used to that when it comes to media and storytelling in general. Usually it's just like one side, so everybody kind of roots for somebody. So I think that's kind of, if you are out there and you're just like a show watcher, kind of challenge yourself a little bit to understand it from other people's perspectives, like Abby's versus Joel's versus Ellie's, because it's not one person's story, it's all their stories. It's a people story. It's about their evolution from becoming like an apocalyptic world and these groups joining, and it does have political aspects in it a little bit. And yeah, so challenge yourself a little bit, but though that's my thoughts on the characters. I don't really have too many like gripes about it because I kind of go into things with low expectations and I just take things as they are. And I knew there would be changes. And I think with Bella being autistic, I think that so they kind of like let her play into that a little bit. And I think that's why sometimes her rage isn't the same as this game rage. Right. So I guess my final thought on that.
Yeah. Can I ask you a follow-up?
Yeah.
You thought the finale was pretty. Your video was like it's the perfect finale, right?
Yeah.
What do you feel is different about your take? Because the finale is so divisive. So what do you like personally disagree with on what some people are saying to consider the finale perfect? I'm really curious.
I honestly, what I really liked about it was just kind of the cliffhanger portion of it, because I think that the way that it ends where Abby is, like there's a gunshot and it cuts to black and then it goes over and kind of is like telling you, okay, season 3, you're going to like step into her story, which I think all of us as gamers, we kind of knew like, okay, season 3 is going to be Abby's story. But like people that just watch the show, they're probably thinking we're never going to see Abby's whole side of the thing. So I think that is more so where I feel like it was the like perfect finale, is just like, because I wasn't really sure if they were going to end it off there at all, like watching it. And especially because it was like only 7 episodes, like that is like a relatively short season for a show. I feel like over time things are getting shorter and shorter, but yeah, so that's kind of where I feel like it is. It's more so like just like the actual cliffhanger of the ending
Oh, yeah.
It would be cool to hear everyone's thoughts too at some point of if you thought it should have ended at the smash to black or if it should end with teasing Abby. I feel like I have opinions about that, but I like everyone's all around.
Yeah. I think you're right. Like, I think somebody said like it's going to be a hard sell for season 3. I have seen the stats a little bit. They actually have lost a lot of viewers after Pedro, and with him being killed off, people watch the show for him. Like, people are hardcore Pedro fans. But so I think that was like seeing Abby and trying to force people to like her is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
But
so do you think that they did that intentionally to prepare people? Because imagine if it was just went to black and then it went straight to Abby to begin with. And like they expended us just like we did as gamers. We didn't know.
Yeah.
Right. It was kind of, not to say it's hand holding, but it's at least preparing them to know at least we're going to take shovels of this. And again, I said this in the beginning, like I really was hoping for a linear story for season 2 and whatever they were going to do. I was hoping they weren't going to try to do a non-linear like they do with the game. But because they are approaching it this way, I get why they probably had to do it that way, but we can talk about it.
It's the only way they could do it since they chose to do it the way that they did in the games. To me, at least, like that was the only way that they could end this season was right there when you do the shift, and
that's
that's
the only thing that made sense to me is that moment. I just, like you said, like I don't know I didn't know if it was going to be just black and credits, or so like when that happened, I was like, am I going to start seeing names or Abby?
Yeah.
Again, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to JL to comment on that. JL, I mean, obviously you're pretty fresh on the game, I think, compared to most of us, because you had only played it fairly recently. How do you feel about that, conclusion and how that influences, I guess, your overall take on the season?
Honestly, when Blank, my editor and channel runner, when he told me it was going to be 7 episodes, I told him exactly where it was going to end. But if it had been me doing it, especially since viewership has dropped in the second season, when they come running through that door and that gunshot went off and he dropped and fade to black, y'all don't know. You wouldn't have seen Abby or nothing till season 3, where you show them Abby. If they already have a bad taste in their mouth for Abby, if they start thinking to themselves, well, the whole next season is going to be her, they might not show up. Like, for instance, like, my mom don't know nothing about the game. I told her it was a game. She don't care, but she's watching the show because I reacted to it. So she was like, one of the things she said to me was, why did they show the little girl at that football field? I said, well, because the next season is going to be about her and her side of the story. She said, but we don't like her. So there's many people out there like my mom that's like, we don't like her. And they, like, you know what I'm saying? My mom literally would not watch season 3 if I didn't react to it. Like, I know I'm going to react to season 3, so she'll watch it. But if I didn't react to it, it would end it right there. Because she don't want to hear about nobody she don't like. Like, and I try to explain to her, I was like, if season 1 was about Abby and her dad, you'll be on Abby's side of the story. Because a lot of people in the comments on the Reactor channel and the gaming channel got mad at me because I said I understand the Abby side. You know what I'm saying? Because maybe because it's like I'm watching this and I played the game post Game of Thrones. I'm not as like heartbroken by it because I expect characters to get killed. They spent like Greg said, they spent 5 different times this season telling you Joe's a shitty person.
Yeah.
They also told you in season 1 a whole bunch of times Joe's a shitty person. Like, they told you he's a monster. And in any movie that I've seen, or even in real life, you go out and kill a whole lot of people, eventually somebody's going to catch up with you. So Joe getting killed really didn't affect me none during the gameplay, because to me, that's just good writing. He's going to die. He's bound to die this way, some way. But on the show, I ain't gonna lie, it fucked me up. You know what I'm saying? Especially her riding on the back of the horse, keep looking back at him. Like I was not built for that moment. But like overall, like characters die. Like for instance, my dog is named Khal Drogo. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I thought Khal Drogo was gonna be the baddest motherfucker walking in Game of Thrones. He got up out of there season 1.
Yeah. There he goes.
I didn't want you. I just said your name. I'm sorry. I apologize. You know, I gotta be thugging. I'm sorry. My baby going crazy sometimes. But
yeah. I think if you're invested in the series and the show and the narrative, like it makes sense, you know, why the story would sort of, you know, end this way for Joel and why it would sort of end, you know, develop the way it does for Ellie. I think what the real twist of it is trying to make us empathize at the same time with his killer, and I think that's sort of like, you know, the emotional core of the game itself is trying to make you, you know, understand like vengeance, you know, always has, you know, two sides to it. There's, you know, always like a reasoning and a logic behind it from both sides. One might be justified more than the other from like one perspective to another, but it's always that you can't just write off the entire thesis behind it from whoever's driving it. Rob, to help us sort of, I guess, wrap up, I guess, maybe the season 2 discussion before we get into our predictions. I guess, how did you feel about the season overall and that element of Abby's development?
So overall, season 2, I did enjoy it. I did personally feel like there was a slight drop off from season 1. I'm the kind of guy that reads or watches the movie and then is like, well, it happened this way in the book, and so it's hard for me to separate the game and the show sometimes. But there were definitely changes that I really liked, like episode 2, like a lot of people have mentioned. It's just it's such a cool moment for someone who's played the game, because I'm expecting to know everything that's happening, and as soon as that battle started, I was like, whoa, well, this is really cool. I don't know what's going to happen right now, and I thought that was great. One of the things I was hesitant at first about, and I remember messaging you about it, Eric, was the fact that Tommy wasn't with Joel whenever he died. To me, I thought that was so important to the story. I'm a sucker for brothers and any kind of media with, like, you know, the brotherly love. I love it. I think it does make sense for the way that the rest of the season panned out. See, like, that was my thought when I initially watched the episode. I'm like, why isn't Tommy with Joel? What the heck? But if Tommy was with Joel, we wouldn't have gotten to see the battle at Jackson. And then further, I think that flashback scene where, like, Tommy or Joel says goodnight to Tom and he's like, I'll see you in the morning or something like that, then we wouldn't have that. And I thought that was a really emotional scene in the show. And that hit for me. I was like, wow, he's never going to get to see his brother again. So that was a really good change. To comment on some things that other people have said, Greg, you mentioned Caitlin Dever and her performance as Abby. I thought she killed it. I thought she absolutely killed it. No pun intended. But I was also hesitant at first, like, seeing the casting, because to me, in my brain, when I think of Abby, I think of running around and punching people to death in the game. not even using the guns or anything, using these guns, like, straight up, just absolutely punching people. But seeing her in the show, I honestly thought she was a scene stealer. Like, every time she showed up, I was like, she is, like, leading this room right now. And especially, like, her facial expressions, I thought were just so accurate. The way that she sounded, it was like she really was Abby in every way except for just being a WWE wrestler. But that was one of my highlights. I really liked her. I'm super pumped to see her in season 3, getting more of the spotlight. One of the things I wasn't a fan of personally, and to kind of piggyback off what Mickey said a while ago, was Ellie, to me, in season 2, did feel still a bit childish in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when you play the game, there's a very, very distinct difference between Ellie in the first game and the second game. Like, she is a grown woman in the second game. She is an adult. Right. And I could see that at times in season 2, but for most of the time, I still felt like that kid Ellie in some ways. And Ellie, I mean, she's always been funny. She's a really funny girl. but sometimes to me it was a bit too jokey in this season. Like the one that I think of that like sticks out to me was when Dina was explaining like triangulating to her, and she's like, yeah, it's math and triangles. And I was just like, I don't know if I'd ever see Ellie saying that in the game personally, but I think part of that also comes from when you play the game, and like we've all talked about already, like she is murdering people throughout this game. Like she's killing everyone. And I think it is hard to convey that in a television show. Like they can't show us like bottle throw into stabbing them, into pulling out the bow to shoot them, into getting the revolver out. Like the absolute badass action that you see in the game, I feel like would be pretty difficult to show that. But I feel like that is part of what makes Ellie in season 2, is that grittiness, that drive to just get revenge no matter what, because she doesn't care about anything else besides getting to Abby. I think that overall, I did like the season. I was one of the people that I'm not a huge fan of them putting the porch scene there. I think as its own thing, like if I just watched that episode on its own and I don't know anything about part 2 or anything, like I probably would have loved it. Like I still did really like it. Like they executed it very well. I thought that the acting between Bella and Pedro in that scene was fantastic, the way that they did it. But just the placement of it to me, as a game purist, like I just can't let it go. But I think that hopefully with, me not being a huge fan of some of the changes in the beginning and then seeing the rest of the season play out, hopefully I'll be able to, look back on that decision and be like, okay, they made the right decision. So I'm really looking forward to season 3 and seeing what they do there. Since everyone has played the game before, I wanted to ask, did you use a bottle or a brick? Which one did you guys pick up? Because to me, I was a bottle. I'm playing the game. I'm playing the game right now. I'm a brick. So I've changed.
You're a changed man.
That's hilarious.
It depends on what I want to use it for. If I want to use it as a distraction, bottle. If I want to throw it in their face, brick.
Yeah.
Like that.
They both have their uses for sure.
Whatever I can grab to end somebody, that's what it all boils down to. I did have a really serious question though. I mean, this is for Rob, but anybody else that their perspective on Ellie. So there was 2 different distinct scenes, and I kind of noticed it the first season that Ellie does this really interesting thing where she masks a lot of her anger, her frustration. She used jokes quite a bit, but the scene where they were in Jackson and she was trying her best to show the face that she cared about Jackson, right? And she pretty much was like, whatever means necessary, I'm gonna make them believe me. And then another scene after her joking with Abby, joking with Dina and everything, she has a conversation with Jesse, and she basically says, "I don't care about Jackson. I care about killing this girl. Like the only thing
Fuck the community,
right?
Yeah.
The community that I had was beaten right in front of me, and you see all the amount of emotion and anger she had." And I don't think that they approach that in the game, but I think they do with the show based on the first season and second season, is that she masks everything she actually feels all the time. And you never really truly get a true understanding of how hurt and how traumatized she really is. But you get it in spurts. And so I was going to get you guys' perspective. Is she really just masking a lot of her anger through these jokes and through these small little moments? I was curious y'all's perspective on that, because that's what I got from the season, honestly.
Good point. I think you're absolutely right, because that's a big difference between the character in the game, how Ashley played Ellie, and then how Bella is playing Ellie is Bella's portrayal. Like Ellie's hiding a lot of it, masking a lot of it, and hiding it behind the fact that she is quirky and funny and still young, like becoming an adult, whereas Ellie in the game, as many of you have said, is more like a hardened adults, and it's more no nonsense, straightforward. You can see it in my face. This is what I'm feeling, and I'm telling you with my actions.
Mm-hmm.
Bella is not doing that in the same way. I don't know why they like how, if that is the decision on like the writer's part, if it's conversations that Craig had with Bella, if it's something that Neil wanted, or if it's more like if that just feels more natural because of how Bella is portraying Ellie. But yeah, I'd be very curious to hear more about that, like behind the scenes wise with the portrayal of Ellie, for sure.
Because I just felt in the game like that Ellie and Joel were more similar than anybody else. So like that community line is like, I always saw them as like they as much as Jackson took them in, they never really integrated. Like they did what they were supposed to do and all that, but they always were on their own little island. And that's what makes them such a powerful duo to me, I think, is because they really only have that trust and that kinship. As much as it might extend to people that they've invited in, they're still their circle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's still, that takes priority over everything else. So like when she said that out loud to Jesse, I was like, oh, yep, there it is. I thought that was really, really good. But like going to like she said about the jokes and the masking and stuff like that, like I could see that for sure, but I don't know if that was the intention, if that was ever really conveyed. If so, that may have been the intent, but I would feel like if I was, that would be me trying to explain the humor rather than I think it actually being conveyed in the way they were intending it to play.
What if she wasn't hiding it though? Like it's one the only reason I'm asking is because like I'm one of those people that something can bother me, and I just like I push it to the side, and I won't think nothing about it. You know what I'm saying? Then one day, 7 years down the road, something that happened, and then everything that was bothering me that I didn't know was bothering me just pop out. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what if she didn't know she was as hurt as she was, and then at that moment it just boiled over?
Yeah, or what if she had a different response if the community voted yes to going with,
right,
rather than no? I feel like maybe that could have been the switch for Ellie. But yeah, it's tough. We're not really going to know. I think the main changes that they made in Ellie is to just kind of balance Dina in so that they're more of a team. That's how it came off to me in the show versus the game, is that they definitely feel more like Dina tries to ground Ellie, and because Ellie is very like flight, like she's just like kind of selfish. Just like she's got a one-track mind to get Abby, and that's all she cares about.
I think you're totally right, because I think the voting thing I think is one of the most important changes this season. Is like it's because it shows Ellie like give an attempt to play by the rules, I guess, in a way. It doesn't really go her way, so they sneak off, and then you're right, Dina is like the grounding for her. I think Isabella Merced does a fantastic job portraying that the levels of that, of like her. She can be just as funny as Bella and Ellie, but she can also be very serious and tell Ellie to knock her bullshit off. And I think that's a really great dynamic that they've established throughout the season.
If I could chime in, because
No.
I will, because Nikki asked about 12 minutes ago if you can make a couple more points after Rob, and I'm like, let's just delay Nikki making these extra points that he wants to make.
That's what I've been doing.
Awesome. But to what Sam was saying, I mean, there's two scenes that do, I think, spotlight what he's pointing out. After Joel's death, the next episode, being released from the hospital. Like she's traumatized. Like that first episode, the third episode starts off where she's screaming on the gurney because all she sees is Joel dying. So I think she would be like obsessively thinking about it. And then when Gail lets her go, you see her like go from smiling. Then when she's by herself, her face goes back to like sad neutral. And there's another moment too. I forget which episode it is, where it starts off with her and Dina, and they're kind of joking around a little bit, and it's lighthearted. And then she goes to play the guitar. And then like a couple seconds in, she's back to that neutral seriousness. I think what the show was intending, and intention and execution don't always go hand in hand, and sometimes things get overlooked. I think what the show was intending was what Sam is suggesting. that, perhaps when she's by herself or alone in her own thoughts, that's when we're supposed to feel and see that revenge in her, that obsession permeating in her. And I just think sometimes the show might have dropped the ball a little bit on really letting that vibe of Ellie resonate throughout. But I think that is 100% the intention, even if it's not fully felt. But Nikki brought up a point a lot earlier about something I didn't consider, that because she was saying that she views her as neurodivergent, and I could see how that could then even get more lost if that is also the intention, because it's a different way to process emotions. I think you missed the mark a tiny bit of because I think it's just too common of a complaint for that. Like, okay, yeah, they were definitely setting that up, but it kind of would drop the ball. I think they missed out on letting the presence of that be felt throughout the entire season.
Yeah, definitely that's the intention. And like you said, like there's definitely maybe a disconnect between intention and execution and how that's handled. I don't, obviously people like to attribute that to Bella's performance, and I don't think she's not on set improving and saying these lines, for the sake of it. Like, it's obviously written this way. So there's obviously something like a thought, a thesis behind, why it's portrayed that way. So I think it's definitely something that they put a lot of thought into. Mickey, you, as Greg said, you have some final thoughts to help us tie up the.
This better be good, Mickey. This better be good.
I was
waiting for it.
I was taking notes as everybody was talking. This was a really good discussion, and I remembered a few more things. Yeah, unfortunately, with the Ellie's writing, it's a tough thing because they missed the mark a little bit, and then you couple that with Joel's death. It's like Joel's death is already a hard sell to the audience, and then kind of dropping the ball on Ellie's writing kind of exacerbates that so much more. I didn't mind the humor a little bit here and there, but I do agree it was a little bit too much because like Joel's death is like, I think of Gohan after Android 13. Like, it's that moment of just like, it's like her innocence is gone. She's just a one track like train towards violence, and nothing can stop her. And I do think we needed to see more of that. And to Greg's point from earlier, we did need to see more violence, and sometimes we needed to see a little bit less. And an example I can give you is Nora's death. I thought there were some moments in the game that, like, I agree with them taking creative liberties to change things here and there, but I feel like there were some moments in the game that were good as is and didn't really need changing. So Nora's death, first of all, like Sonny said, like how'd she get into that hospital? And in the game, she kills, a bunch of people, but in the cutscene, when she gets out of the water, she kills the girl. I forget the character's name.
Oh yeah, shit, that's right.
Yeah, she kills one more significant person right before Nora, and some of these deaths in the game were kind of consequential. It's because they would start fighting back for their life. Obviously they would, and Ellie would have to stab them. So it's not like she was kind of going there for the kill, although it's like, what else were you gonna do there? But Nora's line in the game was, "I don't give up my friends," and that's not how they portrayed it in the show. And also, that was one of those moments where I think we could have held back from showing the violence, because they don't show how Ellie hurt Nora in the game. She just swings, and then we cut to black. But in the show, we see her, hitting her in the leg repeatedly. They kind of showed that violence there. But I think what was more powerful is in the game, in the next moment, when she goes back to the theater.
Oh yeah.
The only thing, as Dina is patching her up, it's completely silent. Dina's not really asking her anything. She just knows something bad went down. And then all Ellie says is, "I made her talk." And that's all we needed. That's all we needed. But in the show, there's like this big exposition to Dina, and I feel like the weight of that line kind of got lost. So there were some moments in the game that I was like, why didn't they just do it as they did it in the game? I don't know who mentioned it earlier too, like Mel and Owen's death. I think that was kind of a miss too, because Ellie is kind of stumbling through that moment in the show. She's like, Okay, how do I handle this? Grab that map, but point at the map, and it better be the same. Like she's nervous, she's scared, which I guess would make sense. But in the game, she's in there commanding like the spot from the moment that she's there. And again, I hold the writing responsible for this because people forget Bella's performance as Lyanna Mormont in Game of Thrones. And they were a much younger actor back then and stole every single scene. So Bella is capable of that like command presence acting. Like the talent is there, but it is strange how they kind of wrote her in this game. I do think that they were kind of trying to lessen the blow on some things, but that is counterproductive to the story that they're trying to tell. Like this is even in the game, as you're playing through the game, you as the player, like it's so violent, it is so visceral. Every firefight feels so chaotic, and it is like super violent to the point where you as the player are like, okay, this is a bit much, Ellie. Maybe we could call it here. I think we're like 75. I think we're like 75 people in. I feel like that's a good trade, So yeah, it's just unfortunately they didn't give that feeling, but I was hopeful when we were doing the discussion after the reaction, the way Marquetta and Nubby were talking about it. I think they still walked away with like the same feelings that the game and the show were supposed to give you. So I think ultimately people did get that. But I was also hoping, like Sonny, for a more back and forth storytelling. I think that would have worked way better for the live action. Maybe, and also 7 episodes as compared to 10 episodes in the last season. Like this is a way longer, way more complex story. And I think taking away 3 potential hours of, extra storytelling, maybe they could have added an episode or a flashback where we see Joel in his early days doing one of his like raiding things to, that could have been a good addition to the show, because we play the game for like 40 hours and we play the game multiple times. We've spent so much time with Joel. The audience has only spent 10 episodes, 10 to 12 episodes before he's gone. Yeah. So I don't know, maybe they could have extended the season to where Joel dies at the end of this season, and then we continue with Ellie's story next season. Abby's the next season I think is coming out 2027. That's 2 years. Yeah. It's like that's too long. They really, they really needed to film this back to back. It's already a hard sell, and taking that much time when they've already lost a good bit of their audience. Like obviously the fans are going to be there, but I'm going to be curious to see how many show watchers still show up, but yeah,
it's tough. Like, I've been watching some more K dramas lately for editing purposes for other shows. Rob knows what I'm talking about. He's watched a lot of those. Particularly, there's one show called Moving that's really great.
So good.
I won't spoil what it is. If anyone needs to see it, definitely go watch it. But it's a 20 episode season. And they structure it so it's like a 3-act structure. So it's like the first 8 episodes is one story, the next 8 episodes is like another sort of set of the story, and then the last episode is like tying it all together. I feel like in an ideal world, maybe in the old world of TV, we could have had a 20 episode season of this show. I just feel like, unfortunately, and I don't blame even them for what they're working with, we're just kind of past that era because of what I call creative inflation. Every TV show has to be like a movie level production now, which costs so much money, which costs so much time to put together. So you can't really like afford to like make the seasons that long anymore. It's just like not the sort of era that we're living in now, with like the way people expect TV shows to look. Even if you compare it to like Game of Thrones season 1 to House of the Dragon season 1, the production value is so huge and it's grown so much. So I don't fault them for the idea that there's no way we're going to finish this in like one season, because we can only afford to do one season at a time of 7 to 8 episodes. So I think, they probably had to find a way to split it up in a meaningful way. Like you said, though, I wish they had done it so they could do it year by year. So we kind of had that going already. So we don't have to wait as long.
I think that's a common sophomore problem with some shows now. If you look at House of the Dragon, Squid Game, and Last of Us, all 3 seasons, season 1, are solid, complete seasons. And then when they do their sequel season, it's like, no, now we're going to tell this story over a couple of seasons instead of really making a fully felt complete season 2, which then
feels unfinished. It really does.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
leaving. It's a weird choice. Like I think they get like overly confident that people will be here. Look how huge our first season was, but then it somehow sacrifices something by dividing it up like that. You know?
Yeah, they try to turn it into like a slow burn, but it's like there's not enough like in it to make it feel like it's making an impact.
Yeah. Impact's the right word. Yeah.
Because I saw like I can't remember the exact number that it was. Like the amount of time that you spent in Seattle as Ellie, like as a gamer, it's hours, right? So like once we're at the end of this stretch, kind of what Mickey was talking about, you know, I think somebody did the calculation. We only actually spend 90 minutes of screen time in Seattle. So like we've got not a lot of Ellie's time there. What we get are the impactful story beats, but not like the hunger, the tunnel vision, the quest. And then another like tweak, like it goes into like the brutality or I think they did a pretty, honestly, I think her murder of Nora is scarier in the show. Like we don't have that build up, we don't have the hunt, but like when she got there, Ellie just like she goes into like a serial killer mode. Like when in the game, this is one of the few times where I feel like they did the opposite of what I expected by that point with the way that they have been building Ellie up differently. I was like, while in the game, you could see a hesitation in Ashley's performance as she's leading in. And you know, because she only has the pipe in her hand because she had to take it from Nora, and then she's like, it's not going the way she thinks, and it's slowly descent, and then she's like, okay, well, I guess this is the route we're going. There's like a sadness to the fall, but like in that moment, like it's just like it's a little. I get this conflicted messaging with their idea of what Ellie's journey is in the show, and I think this is one of those moments. I liked it, but like when you're looking at the whole package, it feels a little disconnected when we get to like the Mel and Owen scene. But like that's over there. That pipe wasn't in Nora's hand. She didn't wrestle it away. She was like, that looks good. And she just grabs it and is like, all right, bah! And just starts going down. It's so much more visceral and like dark,
deliberate.
Deliberate. It wasn't like she fell into this moment or she's giving into this moment. It's just like that became a choice before it started. And then you go to the Mel thing, and all of that, unlike the game, is an accident. You know, the Owen thing was because Owen, you know, bum rushed her, but then they changed Mel's death from her stabbing her to because I shot Owen, it got taken away. But then I don't know, man. It's just like I get what they were doing with that too, because like she's pregnant, she's not thinking about herself. It's meant to mirror Dina and a potentiality if she continues on. But then you also in the game, you've got, you know, Ellie. He's like, I'm going to kill them, every last one of them.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add to your point about the actual time spent in Seattle. Like I hadn't heard that until you just said it right now. 90 minutes is absolutely crazy when you really think about it. I probably spent 90 minutes opening drawers in Seattle looking for ammo. Like, honestly. So to think that we saw that entire storyline play out in just an hour and a half is pretty crazy to think about. And I'm replaying the second game right now. I totally forgot about, you know, there's the part in the game where you get to Seattle and then Ellie and Dina are, you know, they're trying to open the gates. So they need to turn on the power and they need to get the gasoline or whatever. And then you do all that. You can take as much time in Seattle as you want. You open the gate and then the bomb goes off. Like Shimmer explodes. And like, I'm not mad that they didn't do that. Cause like, I love Shimmer. I'm glad they kept Shimmer alive. But what happens because of that, I feel like was a real missed opportunity. Like there's that whole character that I don't think exists in the show. I think is it Travis or Troy or something like that? He's the guy that she scratches on the face.
Got the knife.
With the knife, at the beginning. And you know, it blows up and then she's captured. And I just thought that as I'm replaying the game, I'm like, wow, this would have been really cool if they did like a whole episode or even like half an episode covering this, because it was such a cool part of the game. And even like Ellie's captured, and I think the guy says something along the lines of like, how did you find us? And she says like, I looked for the guy with the bitch ass scar on his face. And that would have been so cool to see in the show. And then Dina like falls through the ceiling and like attacks someone. It was just awesome. And I'm just replaying the game. And I was like, oh wow, that's a missed opportunity.
I think that because in the game, at least to me, like personally, like I enjoy the whole game, but I think I enjoyed Abby's journey more than Ellie's journey, or at least that part of the game. I enjoyed it more because with Ellie, it's just like you're just constantly fighting and in these impossible situations, and it's so dark and it's dreary, and she's so serious about it all, and it's just, again, a lot of killing and of course some badassery. So I think they might have like overcorrected with that and gone too much in the other direction. Again, yeah, that's the feeling I had when I was playing the game, that going through the first part of it as Ellie, I was actually getting a little bit like, can we do something else? Like, this is too much. This is too much of a bad thing, so to say. So when you finally switch to Abby, and that story has more to offer, I think there's more variety there. They try to interject some more variety into Ellie's story, I guess, with some more humor and taking away a big portion of the violence, taking away some of the violent nature of Ellie. But then, as Michael also said, like then there's that one scene with Nora that's even more violent. So how does that? So I'm just, again, very curious about like some of the thoughts behind those changes.
I mean, I think, Sonny, you bring up a really good point, because I never really looked at it like that, and I'm glad Omni brought it up. Is that in the game, Ellie is like, I'm going to kill them all, and in the show, her intent is really just to get Abby. She always says, I'm going to kill her. I'm going to find her. How, by any means necessary, I'm going to get her. And when I played the game, when we got to the Nora moment, that was the moment that I was like, do I have a choice here? Do I have to do this? Like, I literally was like, I don't want to do this, because this is going to change Ellie forever. Like, this is something you're not going to come back from. And I honestly, when I never forgot it, I just was like, I don't want to do this. And as Ellie was killing her, like, I was like, I didn't want to do it, right? In this, it feels like she just allowed herself to do this. And it was more so like, oh man, I'm going to recall this all. I'm bringing this back. You're going to hurt, and you're going to feel all of this because I had to feel it. And I don't think she went to Nora with the intent to kill her, because I think she really just wanted Abby, but she allowed herself to kind of like the guilt and the anger just to kind of just unleash her. She's using this as a moment to just get what she wants. She's being selfish. Right. She's just trying to kill her with intent. And I think even when the second moment happened with the two, like, it mirrored what Joel did to those two people in the first scene. Was like, yeah, point on the map. And I was like, wait, is she intending to kill them anyway? But I really don't think she was going to. And yet it all happened anyway. So it's just so interesting that they changed the perspective of how Ellie is looking at all this, and also her motivations. Because in the game, it was like, oh man, everybody can catch these hands. But in this, it's like her point has always been, I need to get her, because by killing her, I can get some reprieve. And the more she's not getting that, the more she's just lashing out on anything that moves. So it's very different. But I think that Neil had to intentionally have done that with Craig, because I never looked at it like that. And even with us talking about it, it's a different perspective. And also, like, if you're a game purist, like, it also has to feel conditionally different too. Like, I don't know how game purists would feel like, oh, wait, this is not her motivation. That wasn't her motivation before. So it's really interesting we're talking about it like this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's definitely a deliberate intent behind that, which is just refocusing, the scope of revenge and like what that means. Keeping it focused on sort of a personal motivation rather than like this like rampant thing that spreads out. Because again, we can't really spread that into like the sort of like rampant killing that we see in the video game, where you're killing, like Mickey said, like 100 people, on the way there to the really important ones. And yeah, it's interesting to sort of dissect, those elements of like what they can do with like the motivations behind the characters, and like shifting that to like feed into the specific interactions with like the main characters that we know, like Nick, Owen and Nora and so on. I want to get into the final section that we have here for season 3 and beyond. Greg, will tee you up here so you can have your final thoughts before you get to leave us today. Getting into season 3, I think Nikki mentioned that they have like a 4-season plan for this, ideally. What's one thing from the games you kind of hope that they take in for the next season, and where do you think that season will ideally end for you? What's a good cutoff point?
Wow. I mean, I think Santa Barbara can be its own season in its entirety.
Probably going to, yeah.
I feel like that would be the smartest call. I think there's some weird threads that they set up in season 2. Not weird in a bad way. Like I like what they did with the stalkers, edifying it to be like, hey, they're evolving in some way. And like when I played the game, I never looked at the stalkers like that as the evolution. I'm like, well, they're scary, but killing a clicker still feels harder to me. A bloater still feels harder to me. The way they leaned into the ability that the infected have, where they can make a choice, where there's a bit of a consciousness to the way they operate, I thought was a smart enhancement, and it still feels in tune with what the stalker is in the game. It just heightens a point of view now about the stalkers. And there's a whole council meeting in the game, in the shows about this. And so I hope they actually lean into the evolution of what's going on with the infected. Obviously Rat King, I think, has to come into play. Shamblers, spores. There's a lot they set up, and I think sometimes the show has a maybe not. I don't even want to use the word equal. I feel like there needs to be a bit more of an equitable balance from time to time, where we never lose sight of the world of the infected. Because I think both seasons kind of do that a little bit. For like the first half, you're aware, and then the last half, you're like, oh yeah, that there's infected people. there's a whole other apocalyptic landscape thing going on about that we kind of forgot about. Because I know the show's not Walking Dead, or it's not supposed to be about that, but I think there is that does need to be more of an actual presence. And the my favorite Abby level is the one where she's first working with when Lev breaks her off of the rope, and then they're running through I think they got to adapt that visceralness so much. I think they would rob Caitlin Dever. I think that if there's a lesson they have to learn, it's about where reception kind of fell off when it came to how people received Bella Ramsey's portrayal. Like, slightly enhanced what you guys were talking about with Seattle Day 1 and the limited time. It's like, well, structurally speaking, they still could have done it in like 90 minutes to 2 hours, because if you're doing the Seattle Day 1, Day 2, Day 3, it should feel like every single day is building up. Every single day is ramping up. Every single day, Ellie is getting worse. And we don't really feel that transgression. And I think in the attempt to make Ellie more likable, it somehow made her character feel a little more unlikable to a lot of people, because it was like the direction, as Omni was pointing out, it gets a little bit muddled, because they're like, wait, what exactly are we going for here? Like the wanting the relentless exhaustion of Ellie is something that I think we wanted. Like Mickey was bringing up earlier in the game with Nora, of what happens after, and like a beat that happens in between that in the game is Ellie standing outside of the door, and she's shaking in the rain, and you're seeing how like physically disturbed she is by what she's doing. And so much of the ramp up is going like in when you're playing the game, like, Ellie, you should stop. Ellie, maybe we should turn around. But she gets more blinded by rage and revenge the more she goes. So then by the time you get to the Mel death in the game and she's having the panic attack, it is disturbing. And like I'm there, like as a player, like feeling the hyperventilation happening in my chest. And I think that that's what they'll have to do with Abby. They cannot lose sight of that with Abby. You know, when we were talking about the Mel and Owen scene, I like the way they adapted it. I do. I like Mel. Trying to have the baby still survive and be cut out. But in the game, by the time they get to by the time Ellie gets there, when the way Owen reacts, Owen was like, "It's you. You're the one who's been killing off all of our WLF. You're the one." Like there's kind of an awareness that someone is attacking us and someone's taking us out, and then he's surprised because he's the one who fought to made sure they did not kill Ellie after they killed Joel. He was the one who defended not killing her, and now this is happening. So with Abby, I think they have to somehow portray the visceral intensity and show the fighter. You know, a friend of mine was saying with Ellie, I think they were like still felt like a kid because they wanted to have this effect, like they're like Dina and Ellie are kids way in over their head. And I'm like, okay, that's fine, but still lean into the fighting with Ellie. Like, let the fact that she looks small and unintimidating, let her be someone who's underestimated, and show Ellie getting crafty, show Ellie improvising, show Ellie using her own body weight, show Ellie like growing as a fighter while also descending psychologically. Right. Like, there's the ways to do that. And I think with Abby, that's what we have to do as well, is like, look, she might not be the fucking buff Abby from the video game. So let's get creative and try to show a way beyond guns of how she can fight. And I think they're going to need like a banger first episode. I think no matter what they do, that first episode better be like the shit. You have to hook people in. You're asking people for a very big buy-in right now, and that first episode is going to be sink or swim for a lot of people. And as far as where it ends, I do think it will. I think it'll end at the theater. I imagine they'll have some type of resolution where they go back to Jackson after the whole theater incident. But I'm kind of hoping they don't do the time jump to the farm in that episode. Or they could do actually, no, now I'm thinking about it, they might do the time jump to the farm, that have all that, and then the game when Ellie leaves Dina. I think they might end it there so they can set up the Santa Barbara mission. It's just my theory, but
that makes sense. Yeah.
That's what I got. I think there's ways to improve upon where. I don't think now's the time to become like defensive. You know what? This is what we wanted to do, and because like the polarization is more than just like this one crowd who loves to hate shit and get clicks off of it. It's I think it's a real polarization for people.
Absolutely, yeah, and I agree. I think they're going to need to take a big swing and show how capable Abby is, and give Caitlin Dever like some real action to do. Show her, I don't know, like going full John Wick, the raid style, just like kicking ass. Especially the way that they talked her up as like the next leader of the WLF. Like I would love to see her kick off the season with a bang.
Yeah.
I'll tee us up, Greg. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know you got to run, but thank you for your thoughts and your participation. It's always a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was an honor seeing some of you guys again. Omni, we talk regularly.
You too, Greg.
But I'll just say, like, Nikki, your reactions have been awesome. Descendants, that's what I saw of you. That was the one. Cat and Son always killing it. EOM, JL, your Jurassic Park reaction, it was so funny. And so it's cool seeing you real time. Like, I remember the Impossible reaction, watching like 3 dudes congregate together to get
All
super-
crying.
kind of 3 men crying together. I think like that's a big part of what reaction is like, showing the emotions behind.
Let's all cry together. Yes.
Yeah.
The bonding experience.
The Team JVS, I remember seeing some of your like Walking Dead reactions. I really like Game of Thrones as well. Yeah, it's some big ass videos. So it's an honor to see some of you guys again, and it's an honor to meet some the others. So thank you guys for your time, and thanks for letting me participate. This is one of those things where we could 100%. Like there is 1,000 different things I wanted to say, but I was like, yeah. I mean, like I got a reserve, and so thank you guys for the wonderful conversation, and I would love to stay in touch with everyone. So thank you.
Of course.
Thanks, man.
Man.
Nice to meet
Later,
you.
dude.
Later, guys.
Peace.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, I mean, just continuing on, the same topic for season 3 and onward. I'll jump up to Nikki for this one. Nikki, again, what is something you kind of hope they retain from the games moving forward for season 3, and then where do you think is the most comfortable conclusion for you?
I think I have to agree that going off for Santa Barbara would be a good end off for season 3. I just think that makes the most sense, probably. I think that the one thing I would like, I think that they're already going to do this, is that they're going to get the audience to like Abby more than when the gamers played part 2, because obviously when like people were forced to play Abby, it was horrible. And I'm sure there's going to be some that aren't going to really care, but I think that that's going to be their like goal, is for like them to get people to really like not really side with Abby, but kind of like understand where she's coming from. I always felt like the ending of the game felt incomplete to me, because I always felt like it was like there was no closure, and I felt like there could be more to it. So I am curious as to how that's going to go into season 4, like how much they're going to add into it. I would like to see like the Rat King in there, and still some more of the violence, because that is like one of the things I have heard people that are just strictly show watchers, is that they don't like that there's not as much infected, and like that showing that side of it, because that happened with Walking Dead too. It was like eventually it gets really like deep into like the politics of it all, and the communities, and who's your community, who's your group that you're going to stick with. And I think that would be cool if they made sure to keep a lot of that in there for season 3. And yeah, I'm curious. I really like Caitlin's adaptation of Abby. And I think that the way that she's portraying her strengths in different ways, specifically like her endurance, like in the earlier part of season 2, when she's like running down the cliff and she's like jumping up, like her endurance is like crazy to me. So I think that that's like the best way that they could like portray her strength. I didn't really mind that she wasn't buff or anything like that, because it's like every single female character had like some complaint in some way. But it's like more so like, how are they going to portray the character? So yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts for season 3 and hopes.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Yeah. I think having a little bit more of the infected elements, I think is on the agenda. I believe they had said that they obviously plan to bring in the Rat King and the Shamblers and so on, and that's going to be like a big spectacle, I think, as even more so than what Bloater was in season 1. It's just going to be like again, keeping it grounded. I'm so curious how they're going to execute that without making it seem like just like this horrific thing that someone could like. There's no way that anyone could like fight back against that thing from what it is in the game. Rob, we'll go back up to you. What are your thoughts getting into season 3, and like something that you wish that they can hopefully keep intact from that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited for season 3. I feel like like everyone said, it is going to be make or break for a lot of people. Like, I already know so many people that I've talked to that are like, I don't want to see Abby. Like, I don't like Abby. I just don't like her. And now they're going to have to sit on that feeling for 2 years. And I mean, they're not going to just magically like her before the season comes out. So I think that first episode is going to be huge. I agree with what Nikki said. I think that they are going to probably make the fans like Abby more than they did in the game. Which I'm not complaining about. I think Abby's a great character. I think her half of the story is arguably more interesting than the first half. Like, there's just so much more to it. I'm really excited to see Lev and the relationship between Abby and Lev. That's one of my favorite parts of the game because it does mirror Joel and Ellie so much in some ways. That's just going to be really cool seeing the Seraphites explored more. Like we saw them a bit in this season, but I feel like they didn't really dive too deep because they explore that later on. I honestly, whenever I found out that they were doing a season 4 as well, I was like a little shocked just because like I agree they'll probably end season 3 with like the farmhouse and before she leaves Dina and all that, but I mean the Santa Barbara stuff is a good chunk of the game, but a whole season I'm not entirely sure. I feel like they'll have to definitely add some stuff, which I'm not complaining about because almost every time they've added things that didn't happen in the game, it's been great. So I'm looking forward to that. In season 3, I do want to see potentially just like more of Abby's friends. Like I know they're pretty fleshed out in the game, but I feel like if we saw, them before, Joel kills Abby's dad or something like that, like before the Fireflies ended, because a lot of them were Fireflies before the WLF. So that is potentially really exciting. But overall, I'm just really pumped to see Caitlin Dever as Abby get the spotlight because, like I said earlier, I just thought that she was so good in that role, and seeing her become the lead is really exciting for me. And I hope that fans of just the show are willing to give her that chance because they might hate the character right now. I forget who said it, but I think it was JL, I think you said if you saw the story from Abby and her dad's point of view at the beginning, you would be on her side. And I think that's so true, because there is no right side and there is no wrong side. Everybody's wrong, everybody's right. It's just about, what side you're on and what you've seen first and what you've come to know. So there's just existentialism in part 2 with Abby, and just like her side of things are just so intense. And I'm just really excited for season 3. It sucks that we have to wait so long, but I have high hopes, and I hope that they stick the landing.
Yeah. I've, like you said, I've been really excited about all the new things that they've added to the series with the story. I think they'll have a chance to expand upon Abby's relationship with WLF a lot, now that we have a lot more stuff with Isaac and, like scenes with him that fleshes out that dynamic more.
Him throwing the grenade in there was crazy. So I just had to, that was awesome.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Yeah. Exactly. So I'm excited to see, the stuff that they are able to develop. And because this season, spent the first 3 episodes in Jackson with Ellie and setting that up for Seattle. If we have 7 to 8 episodes of Abby in just Seattle, that can be a little slower. We can sort of develop more of the game pacing, from that, because we don't have to set up as much in the first couple episodes. So yeah, hopefully they'll get that going. JL, again, as someone who's played the game fairly recently, what do you think you would like to see sort of retained from that game into the next season? And what do you think it might cut off for you?
The one thing I really want to see in the next season, the whole thing with Abby riding through the village with it on fire. I need that.
That's one of the coolest parts.
Yeah.
I need that in my life. You know what I'm saying? They could change anything else. I just need that. I think the first 3 episodes, especially do another 7 episodes, I think the first 3 will be like Abby's story in Seattle. After Seattle, the 4th episode would probably be like the whole her and Ellie having that little exchange at the theater. 5 and 6, it's just gonna be like pretty much them just giving us like filler. I think some of it probably be like showing connections between her and Isaac a little bit more, or it might not even go day 1, 2, 3 as fast as I'm thinking. I would love to see what they're going to do with her and Owen, because they didn't mention anything romantic with them in this season. I don't think it didn't even hint at them being together. You know what I'm saying? So, because like in the game, you knew Mel was pregnant when you first see Abby and them, because her and Owen have that argument. But we didn't know Mel was pregnant until Mel got shot. I think it's going to end with the farmhouse, but I hope it ends like it don't go too much into the farmhouse. I hope it's more like it shows Ellie somewhere or outside on the tractor and Dina and the baby come out, something like that. But I don't want to get too much into the farmhouse because, like I said, that last mission, that's a lot for a whole season.
Yeah.
That's a whole lot. Like I don't know what they're going, like, I don't know what they could do with it, but I'm here for it either way.
I think there's an opportunity there in that last season because a lot of us are pretty agreed that Santa Barbara probably will the last season will be about. And looking back on it, like again, I haven't played the game in a couple of years, and I think that there does seem something almost remiss about not getting Abby's POV during that point of the game where we see her get captured, then we don't see her again till the very end when we hear that she's gone through so much stuff. And so I kind of would like to see them develop that more. Maybe we can track some of her experience, going through that in the season.
I am very curious though, because Abby, where Abby was swole in the game, and then when we seen her at the end of the game, she was little.
Oh yeah.
Like, so is she going to go through that? Like, is she going to become like, because she's getting smaller?
Yeah, I think that visual execution is like to help us understand like what she has gone through. Like she's very emaciated, and to like know that she's probably been starved and like abused and stuff like that. And maybe you can like supplement that with like the visual experience of seeing that happen in real time in the season if we follow those events without having to like jump to her like much later on. So yeah, I'd be curious if they could develop that a little bit. Sonny, getting into the final season, again, what do you hope they retain from the overall larger story for that?
Yeah, like just don't necessarily want to repeat what everyone else is saying, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, and I hope that they put a lot of effort into Abby's story here, and they're going to have to, because it's gonna be such a hard sell for everyone who's been watching this second season, the people who maybe even fell off after Joel died or been not sure if they wanted to continue or not, and now they're here at the end and they're like, okay. I think having those 2 years between the seasons, it could help because people aren't going to be as mad as Abby once we get to season 3, but they also might not care about the story enough to continue because they didn't appreciate some of the stuff that happened in the second season and how it ended. So I'm really curious on that side of things, just to see, are people going to return? How are the numbers on this season? We already know it's not as good as with the first one. So how's it going to look with the second? Like, even if I don't know, I'm not sure how your guys' reactions did, but ours ate an absolute pile of shit this year. Like, could barely get 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 views per video. Per reaction, so like it seems like a lot of people have fallen off and are not as interested. But we'll see once we get there. And when it comes to like the narrative and the story there, they do also have this opportunity to flesh out a lot of things, because there is more to get into in Abby's story, and there is so much more going on with a bigger cast of characters. Both with the wolves, but also the Seraphites. I cannot wait for them to introduce Lev, of course. I'm not looking forward to the discourse there's going to be like around the some of the stuff that we know we're going to see in the third season, because there's a lot of bigots out there, but be that what it is. And when it comes to like, okay, how are they going to then continue on, like from like the third season to the fourth season? I think what you guys have been saying, and I'm gonna echo JL's thoughts here, that I don't want them to go too far into the whole farmhouse thing. I think what they're going to do is very similar to what they did in this season. They're gonna end at the theater. We're gonna have the big confrontation. Then it's going to cut to black, and then will open on the farmhouse and they'll just tease, okay, this is coming next season.
Yeah.
You return to Jackson with Ellie, with Dina. There's a baby. See you in 2 years. Sort of a deal. I think that's how they're going to end it. And then the fall season, I don't know if they're ever going to do a part 3, like game-wise. So whatever story they have in mind, whatever story Neil had in mind for like even like maybe a continuation of part 2, I think they might put it in that season.
Maybe.
And they're going to wrap up the entire story. So maybe like the first half of the fall season is going to be stuff that we already know, and then the second half is going to be them wrapping up the entire story, and even the games as well. Because again, I don't know if we're ever going to get a part 3, and I don't know if I want to. I don't like. Yeah, we're going to see Ellie a lot then in season 4, because we're playing as her mostly in that section of the game. We don't get a lot with Abby and Lev because they're captured. Yes, I want to see what happens to them, but I also don't want to just watch them get tortured for X amount of episodes, because that's something they did in Game of Thrones with the whole Theon and Ramsay Bolton thing, where it got a little bit like, okay, you don't have to show us all that torture in between. Like it's I know it's a contract thing and they needed to keep some of the actors around, but I'm not a big fan of just watching people getting tortured and that's it. So we'll see, but it's at least like it's very, very exciting what they're going to do here. Again, Abby's part of the story is my favorite part of the story from the game, so that's why I'm personally really looking forward to season 3. And I'll try to tune out a lot of the discourse because that gives me a headache.
Yeah, it's a good idea. A good idea for most of us, I think. No, you're totally right. I think there's an opportunity there for them to wrap up the story. I know Neil has been back and forth on whether they'll do another game or not, so it's a little bit in the air. They might have the opportunity to wrap everything up, in the TV show if they want, with some of the ideas that they might have. So we'll see how that pans out. Mickey, getting into that final season, again from a game standpoint, how do you feel, with the threads that we've set up so far from season 2, where they could explore, the story next, and how that might lead us into the end of the season for season 3?
Yeah, I think they have some opportunities to expand some of the events. Like we just left off with Isaac gathering everybody to go attack the island. So I anticipate that to be like a whole episode set piece. Maybe that'll be a pretty big set piece. I'm very excited for Yara and Lev. That's definitely got to happen. The Rat King is for sure going to happen because they already kind of alluded to it with the episode. They're like, just don't go into the basement. And there was a B1 and B2, and we only see Nora on one of those floors. So there's still a whole other floor there. What I'm most excited to see about is, so when I was playing the game, obviously, I was also on the fuck Abby. Like, I don't want to play this person. I don't care about Abby. But I think that's kind of the point, because like that, you have to kind of sit with that hatred. And the longer you think about it, the more you're like, I get they are kind of two sides of the same coin. So I think given enough time, you do come around to that character. But again, this is a TV show. And like Sonny said, people might not care enough to get to that point. But where I started liking Abby when I was playing the game is when I found out she was afraid of heights. Because like I'm also deathly afraid of heights. So I was like, okay, I suppose that's one thing we have in common. So what I'm actually most excited to see is how they're going to handle the sky bridge, or if they're going to do that at all. But I think there is opportunities to expand upon Santa Barbara, because it was like that group was weird, whatever the heck they were up to. So I think there's opportunities to explore that. Maybe they bring the Fireflies back into it. I don't know. Like even Owen was like, there's leads. Even in the game, he was still kind of on that mission. I actually really like the ending to game 2. I know it kind of ends and it feels a little incomplete, but I think that's kind of the point, because like the whole point of this game is just violence begets violence, and someone at some point needs to make the decision to stop. So I really liked how they wrap things up, but yeah, I think everybody's already said predictions wise, but I'm excited about the Sky Bridge and like the set design. And just to give shout out to like the set design people, the props department, sound design. That was one of my favorite parts about the game, is the environmental design and just how nature takes over. You know, it had already taken over big time in game 1, but then more time passes in game 2, and it's so cool to see how they brought all that to life. So yeah, I'm here for it. I just hope that people are still going to be here for it by the time it comes around.
Yeah. Like I said, like there's like just like the cinematic quality that we have now with the series, with like most series, that it has to look great. That's kind of like the sort of base level that we start with, and then we build up from there in terms of like story and everything. It has to just like look like a cinematic experience. Otherwise, no one could buy into it to begin with. Sam, I want to jump to you because I know you got to head out for today. What were your thoughts? Getting into season 3, what do you hope to see, and where do you think will lead off for season 4?
Man, I think that they're gonna have to kind of show moments, flashbacks for Abby as a character, just kind of getting her to the point that we kind of know her to be. I think it would be even more impressionable for us to get time with her and her dad, like real time, not just a small moment. I think it is going to be a hard sell. I don't know if everybody's going to be on board with it, but if they are as good as they are at storytelling, and we know as Craig and Neil to be, they're going to make it compelling, and they're going to make a good argument to this character's validity, especially when she approaches Liv. Hopefully the casting for that is good. As far as the ending on this, I can literally see it in my mind that the last episode will probably be, them making it out. It's going to cut forward to them on a farm, Ellie being at peace with herself and everything else. And then a silhouette of somebody kind of walking at the door, and it kind of looks like Joel, but it's Tommy knocking on the door. And like, he's like, of course, like messed up physically. And he's like, look, I hate to do this, but are you going to do something about this? And, they don't even have to go through the whole entire conversation. They could just have her walking to the barn, and you still realizing the trauma is still there. We saw the moment with her, in the second episode, having that same exact flash, but we don't know how consistent that is. Right. And so after the fact of like her having that still there, it adds even more volume to her having to still address it. And I think that that's going to absolutely be how they end the 3rd season. The 4th season is going to be a hard tackle too, because I agree with Mythical, and I think some of you guys have said it. I'm going to say this is going to be real controversial. Season 4, realistically, is probably going to air like 2029. Realistically, or even 2030.
That's great. Yeah.
By that time, there may be a Last of Us 3. And to be quite honest with you, that may be in the back of their heads. We already know that they're doing 2 different games right now. Naughty Dog is doing one of the other games they're not talking about, and the other one, of course, is Intergalactic. Mm-hmm. And they know that there has to be a true conclusion to this story. And I can honestly say, I don't think the 4th season is going to be the end of this. That's why I'm real curious how they tee things up. There are just certain things that they're changing, and I think it's intent. It's it's on purpose. Even down to when you guys talk about like Abby's like look physically, I think it's all intentional. So I think we're going to get a 3rd game by the time we get to the 4th season. And I don't know what that means for the rest of this, but I'm all the way for it. And I do think the 2nd game is one of the best video games of all time, but I also think it's one of the most traumatic. And I do know like 25% of people that bought that game quit it and never played it again. And it's going to be the truth of this show. No matter how much they try to water it down, there are going to be people that are going to quit because emotionally it's too traumatizing. It's not entertaining. So it's going to be interesting moving to a 3rd season and to a 4th season, but I'm all the way there for it, even if they go beyond that. So, it was great talking to you guys. I tried to follow as much of you guys as I could. Definitely want to keep in contact. Eric, thank you for setting me up with this.
Of course.
Sonny, thank you for the shout out to my son. You guys have a great one, okay?
Yeah, everyone, thank you, man. Appreciate
You
it.
too. You too. But pleasure, Sam. So
Absolutely.
nice meeting you.
Yeah, bold prediction though that we will have the game by the end of the season. I mean, like I said, we have 2 years till next season, 2 years after that, most likely. So it's a lot of time for them to surprise us with something. So it's possible. And Michael, something that Sam brought up that I would like to hear your thoughts on to help sort of wrap things up here is the idea of the farmhouse being the end and Tommy coming forward. The thing with this season is that they really were pretty kind to Tommy in terms of his motivations. He is not one of the driving forces to help Ellie on her revenge tour. In the game, he is kind of like a catalyst to get her out there because he leaves and they're sort of following his footsteps and so on. And then in the game, he comes back and he's the one sort of stoking her to go after Abby again. But it doesn't seem like that's in his characterization from the show. He is the one sort of being the voice of reason to try and calm her down to get her to stop in the first place. How do you think they'll sort of go about that with Tommy's character getting into the end of the season? And on top of that, what are your thoughts for season 3 as well?
I'm like real curious about how they're going to handle that because, like you said, they did shift that around a lot, and he's characterized very differently too, as well, in a lot of ways. So I'm not sure. They may flip that on at this point with the death of Jesse, and we may get a transition into that because, like, now it's his brother, now it's the guy, now it was his Abby. Because like they were talking about, he's basically like Isaac was talking about Abby was like, we're grooming her to be the next leader of the WLF. And then the way Jesse's talking was like, everybody's expecting me to be the next Maria. So not only did he lose his brother, but he also lost like a linchpin of Jackson's future. So I'm very curious to see if that's going to be the thing, the last little straw for him, if they go that route, or if he'll continue to be the opposite of that whole story in the game. So I'm really interested to see what that conversation is going to look like, or if it's even going to happen. But I'm really excited to see what they're going to do. Like I said, like it's going to be really interesting because unlike the game, you can't just go into it. A lot of that frustration, that feeling, you can just work it out through the game. Now we have to sit with this for 2 years. So I'm just so curious who's gonna feel out the journey, because I forget who said it before. The game is not entertainment. The game itself is an experience, and it's not a pleasant one. It's a test, and I've always called it like an endurance test of empathy, because
a lot of people fail that.
It's like are you willing to walk in your enemy's shoes? Are you willing to see the other side of the coin? Because so much of us are only looking at ourselves, and we're not thinking about who's on the other end of it, what led them to get there. And sometimes you just like, okay, well, yeah, you still came into my house. I was still going to do the thing. Like it can be just as simple as that for some people, but it's really a test of somebody's like, what's the extent of your sympathy? Are you going to make it to the end of the game or not? And some people did, some people didn't.
Yeah.
With the show, you got extra hurdles involved to buy the audience in. So I'm real curious, because even like Sonny mentioned, like my reactions they have not been doing as well as season 1. So I'm really interested to see how this goes, because they haven't been greenlit for a season 4 yet, to my knowledge. So we got a go ahead on season 3, but it's like, what if there's not a buy-in for a season 4, which would be unfortunate as all hell. But shows not get to tell their ending, so who knows? But I do think that I'd be so sad if we skipped out on the Rat King and there was just a little Easter egg or a nod. I really hope we get to see that thing. I don't care if it doesn't make sense for her to escape. I need to see it. Oh, it was an iconic little moment. I missed that we didn't get the basketball court scene with the bloater in season 1.
Yeah.
That was the first huge butthole clincher moment in the game to me, and I was a little sad about that. So I hope we at least still get that. I do think that we're going to end bookend wise, same as we did here, catching back up at the end at the theater, get that fight, that scrap, that Russell, and then I just think, like Sonny said, I think it'll be structured fairly similar, because you can get that ramp up with okay, well, what Ellie's going to do now if we start season 4 at the farmhouse, and then you have to buy in. You don't have to spend so much time fleshing out Santa Barbara.
Yeah,
because I do think a lot of that impact from, okay, she's chosen to continue the quest. You know, this monster is still out there. She got another ping on the radar where she is, and then not seeing her throughout that point, I think, is accentuated when you finally get there, and this creature that has caused her so much torment, this pain, this nightmare that literally gives her PTSD that she can't shake and is tormenting every aspect of her life. And then there's zero satisfaction in finally getting there.
Mm-hmm.
And it just makes it all so much more complicated and complex and dissatisfying. And now she's already lost all of this, and then where do we go from here? She can't play the guitar. She's lost it. The last thing she's got to Joel. She's lost her family. It's a nightmare fuel freaking ending, man.
I forgot about the guitar thing, man. I forgot that the fingers thing. I totally forgot about that until just now. Oh, man.
She lost she not only lost Joel, but she can't even, like, the thing he taught her, she can't do anymore.
Yeah,
because of it too. And she leaves the guitar and the farmhouse and everything behind and just disappears. It's I don't know, man. I didn't think about the timeline wise, though, giving us potentially 4 years out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's enough time to develop a game.
Yeah,
because Neil's been so wishy-washy. Because in the documentary, he talks about, I got an idea, I just got to ferment it or whatever. And then I think, like, last year, he was like, that's the end of the story. There's no game. And then, like, last week, now he's like, I got an idea for a game. So I was like, which is it, Neil?
We got 2 games in development. What?
Yeah, we'll see. I'm interested. Like, it's been a while since the game itself came out. So, you know, like, within that time, it's like basically like a decade's worth of, you know, lead up to get something out. Yeah, a lot of stuff to chew on, a lot of ideas, you know, that we ideally want to see for the story. Like I said up top, this season has been pretty divisive, but I think it's still an achievement, you know, in its own right, because it's near impossible to adapt the story as is, like, one-to-one from what the video game is, because, like we've all discussed here, the video game is such a specific immersive experience that you have to really live through, and that's difficult to adapt just to a medium where we're a bystander watching things happen, and we have to sort of empathize with the characters, like, by being told it rather than living it. And so that's a difficult task to get to. I want to just, like, really quickly, in one word, we'll just wrap things up here, go one by one, ask everyone who is your favorite adapted character, not your character from the game or anything, but your character and the way they're executed on the show specifically. Rob, we'll start with you. Who would it be?
I mean, for season 1, I would say obviously it's Pedro. I just thought that his version of Joel was so cool, even though it's not a 1-to-1 adaptation. And then for season 2, it's probably Caitlin Dever's Abby, and that's crazy because she's in such a small amount of it, but I just think she's so good in that role. And then I got to give an honorable mention to Isabella Merced as Dina. It's a different vibe from the game Dina, but I just loved it. I thought that she was great in every scene that she was in, and I'm excited to see her explore that character further.
Of course. Mickey, how about you?
I really like Jeffrey Wright as Isaac. I love the addition to that, to see his beginning, and I think he's going to be a much bigger part of the show as he was. Like, he was in the game, but he was kind of just, you know, the mission giver per se.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see how they expand with him.
Absolutely. Nikki, how about for you?
I would have to say that for season 2 specifically, Dina, Isabella's adaptation of Dina is so, like, I love Dina now. Like, I'm like, I will fight till the end of the earth for Dina. So that's my favorite one. Yeah.
Michael, how about you?
I gotta piggyback off of that. I like Dina. She served her role in the game. She was fine, I think, for what they needed. But this version, I'm so much more attached to. I think, like, she's so much more rounded as well. And I know they've talked about behind the scenes and stuff like that, how they've workshopped their own ideas into the script that made it onto the screen and stuff like that. So like they got to kind of build out these characters together, and I don't know how much of that was on the page, how much of that was them, but I just think they made her more like, you can see what draws Ellie into her so much more, and she's so much more of a partner in this journey than a just kind of a tag along and stuff like that. And I don't know, I just thought they did a really good job with that. I think like a runner up, I think, would be Tommy to me. I really like Gabriel Luna's just that warmth he brings into that character, and some of the additions they've made around that as well. And we'll see what they do with him later.
Of course. Yeah. JL, how about you?
Even though she was short-lived, I'll go Tess. I loved her in the first one. Season 2, Dina, Isaac. I can't lie, I like Jesse a lot.
Oh yeah, Jesse, absolutely.
Hell yeah.
Definitely.
I love the small part of that kid with Isaac, like from his security guard to when he's standing outside, just that subtle change of like the time and the violence and what that did to him. I thought whoever played that, I can't remember the actor's name, but just those two quick moments and the dichotomy of that was just really well done.
Yeah. He was in the last episode as well, like the guy when they were confronting the fight running away, and
that was him, right? Yeah,
yeah.
I thought. Sonny, to tie us up, how about you? Your favorite character?
Oh yeah, tempted to say Dina as well, also because I think it's a more well-rounded character in the series than in the game, and really smart. Like they make some great decisions there with her character and how she processes things. But I'm also gonna go with Tommy because he, like, the way that he's portrayed here is of course it is different from in the game, and I know a lot of people were disappointed that they didn't get this like vengeance, hate-filled like version of Tommy who's going on a rampage, but I think that what they are doing with his character and what they're setting up with his character is more interesting potentially, what they could do with him in the next season, especially because he's got a kid. Right. That's a new thing. Him and Maria, they have a young kid. He's a father. He has way more to lose, and as a mirror image to Ellie of what she has to lose or what she could lose, maybe like actually going to lose when she pursues Abby again, and looking at Tommy, like they haven't been hard on Tommy during this season compared to the game, but I think that next season they're going to be really hard on Tommy because of how he's going to react to everything here, and when he starts pushing away his wife and his kid, that's going to hurt a lot, and seeing that as a mirror image to what Ellie could lose, I think that's going to be very effective. So yeah, Tommy.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. From my perspective, I'd definitely Jesse and Dina are my two favorite. Isabella Merced, I've known her acting for a while now, but I think it's just such a breakout role for her in terms of what she can do, and I'm excited to see her later this year in Superman as well, and Peacemaker. So we'll see how she does in that. Yes.
One last quick note, just from Kat. With more Pearl Jam references, more of just anything with Pearl Jam, that would be nice.
Yes.
That's it. Yeah.
That's absolutely. If you're listening, Neil and Greg, more Pearl Jam, please, next season. Yes. Thank you everyone for being here. It's one of our longer episodes, but I'm so glad you guys stuck around to help us sort out some of these thoughts. There's been a lot to go over. We've mentioned a few times we could go over this all day. We've barely scratched the surface, with what this show really has accomplished and what it means to us and what the game means to us as well. So I'm excited to look, be here again, maybe 2 years from now, when the third season's out. See if we're all still around to come together again and then revisit that. Thank you all. We'll have descriptions for everyone's, links and socials and everything down below. Please find that. If you're finding this here later, I'm Nerd Chronicles across social media. Find us at Reactorverse across social media as well. You'll find links to our Patreon and Discord down below. And we'll catch everyone on the next episode.
Bye.